Welcome, my friends and enemies. Glad you are here. I am joined by inquisitating, overbearing Baconator, also known as Matt. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, my friend. How are you tonight?
I'm having a dandy old time. It snowed today, so I'm happy.
We're broadcasting here with the power of bacon.
Bacon. I'm kind of hungry. I want bacon now. Dang it. Thanks.
That's the power of bacon.
Dang it.
Makes you want to eat it.
But since you all are here, you obviously know why you're here. We're going to have a little video. It's not really a little one. It's kind of long, actually. Not Mauler long, but it is longer. A conversation about the war for Middle Earth. And since we're going into this pretty blind, neither of us have watched it. We'll see how it goes.
But there's a promise. There's not the usual stroke-inducing talking content that we must respond to. This might be a good point of discussion. So we'll see.
It hopefully will not be stroke-inducing, but it doesn't seem. It seems to be more professional and a bit more academic in some semblance. I know there's one of the guys talking is an author, and I think he's being interviewed by another fellow. So this should be a good discussion. I'm actually pretty positive about this one, but I guess we'll jump in.
Get on.
How does he get the idea for the screw tape letters?
You get louder.
It's 1940. Hitler now controls virtually all of Central and Western Europe. Hitler has just given a speech, I think, on a Friday. He's triumphant. The German people will follow him anywhere. And the speech, Lewis is listening to it. It's being broadcast by the BBC and simultaneously translated into English. Hitler's speech. It's all about, of course, conquest and his rage, his hatreds. Lewis says, actually in a letter to his brother Warnie, he says, while the speech lasts, it's almost impossible not to waver just a little.
Wow.
Think about that. the power, the charisma of it. But then he says, in church on Sunday, he gets the idea for the screw tape letters. Wow. Not an accident, a diabolical fantasy. But he's going to focus on not a global conflict, but the spiritual conflict going on for the soul of every human being. Now, that's a deeply committed Christian author.
I'd never particularly liked reading fantasy.
Yeah.
And I think because most of it is not that good, because it's sort of trying to do what Tolkien did, but without his amazing talent.
Yes.
So he kind of invented...
Okay, pause it there. I need to make a literary point.
Okay, we're just keeping in mind we are just in the intro, by the way.
That's what I mean, because this guy is already coming across. I'm not going to attack him. I'm just saying.
This one's the interviewer, I'm pretty sure. So
yeah, but there's a snobbishness in the way some people approach this. Fantasy applies to almost anything that is written that is fictional, including science fiction, including things like the Little Women and all that. Like classical stuff. So. What he's doing, when someone does that, I don't want to attack him, I'm just saying, when someone says, I don't read fantasy, it's almost a snobbish literary conceit which exists in the field where they separate out like what we would call like fantastical tales that don't exist in reality type of stuff as the only fantasy. As if somehow that even though it's fictitious, like The Lord of the Rings equally fictitious as, let's say A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. They're equally fictitious, right?
Yeah.
They're both fantasy, but guys like this, not him per se, but the training ads of mentality, they just segregate them for no logical reason.
Well, so I don't think he's commenting on the entirety of fantasy or fiction. I think he's commenting on specifically things like the Dragonlance series or maybe Wheel of Time, maybe Game of Thrones, maybe that kind of stuff, because he's just like, they're just not as good as Tolkien, and he probably has read
what
Tolkien.
I'm getting at is, he is arbitrarily saying that one type of fantasy is not that good.
Yeah, he's just giving his opinion. He's not stating it as a fact. He's just saying, I have not found enough to be interesting enough for me to want to read, because they just don't have the impact or the skill or the quality that Tolkien had, which is it's a fine take to have if that's your stance. I mean, I read a lot more fantasy than this guy obviously does, but he doesn't strike me as someone who goes out of his way to read fantasy. So I
Exactly.
can't really hold it against him on his take, because his take is limited because his experience in the fantasy
I'm like I said,
field is also
I'm not
limited.
holding him, but accountable for it. I'm saying his exposure to training and schooling is what bred that into him. Anyway, we go on.
Possibly, yeah.
Genre.
He really did invent the genre.
That's. I don't know that I've invented any genres. Have you ever invented a genre?
This
Welcome
is the channel.
to Socrates in the Studio, which is part of Socrates in the City. The city we're in is New York City. Today, my guest, I am really very happy to say, is a very dear friend, Joe LeConte. But if he weren't my friend, I would just tell you about what he's done. So let's pretend for a moment. Let's see. He is the director of the Rivendell Center in New York City. He's presidential scholar at the New College of Florida. He's the C.S. Lewis Scholar for Public Life at Grove City College. And he also serves as senior fellow at the Sagamore Institute and the Trinity Forum. He's best known for his New York Times bestseller, A Hobbit, A Wardrobe, and a Great War, How J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis rediscovered faith, friendship, and heroism in the cataclysm of 1914 through 1918. He's written a book called God, Locke, and Liberty, The Struggle for Religious Freedom in the West, The Searchers, A Quest for Faith in the Valley of Doubt, and other terrific books that I can recommend. It's my privilege to speak to my friend, Joe LeConte. Joe, welcome.
Eric, it is terrific to be with you.
I'm going to guess that he is not just a standard author of like books and stuff. I think he's also an academic, scholarly author, and most of the books he's probably written are kind of like a biography that he mixes, like the one with Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and the Great War and everything. I think those are a bit more of a topical of like explaining their positions on things and how it influenced them to the spiritual warfare aspects and stuff. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I don't want to look them up now because it might knock me out again.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
Privilege, my friend. Great to be back.
I'm already laughing inside, and we haven't even started. We haven't started. You really, one of the reasons we've been friends for so long is your love for C.S. Lewis.
Yes.
I have never really been particularly familiar with Tolkien, but anytime you hang around with people who love Lewis, you're hanging around with people who love Tolkien.
Yes,
so I feel familiar with Tolkien, if only because of his abiding and very important, as we'll see in this conversation, friendship with C.S. Lewis. Your new book is titled The War for Middle-earth. What is the subtitle? I don't have it in front of me.
The subtitle is J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis Confront the Gathering Storm, 1933 to 1945.
Okay, so your previous book on Lewis talks about the First War in which they fought and suffered, and this one is about them confronting the gathering storm. So you title it The War for Middle-earth.
Yeah.
I just want to ask you, when did you in your life first start reading Tolkien or getting excited about Tolkien?
You know, I didn't read Tolkien, The Lord of the Rings, until after the movies. I was actually in my 40s. I'm a late bloomer, Eric, just so you know. Right? And my friends usually say, LeConte, you call this blooming? Yes, I'm a late bloomer. And I was doing my John Locke academic work over there in London. And so I'm doing John Locke during the day, and I start reading The Lord of the Rings at night in an English pub. And I thought, that's the best way to get. And I found myself so morally invigorated by the story. I thought, there is something here that I think is going to be a part of my literary life at some point, didn't know how.
Do you speak Elvish?
That's a question you should just like go up to Tolkien people and just like, do you speak Elvish? No. Drats.
Queen's English here, man. Come on.
I have a few words in Elvish that I thought I just want to throw out.
Go
Maybe
ahead.
you know what they are. I just have three. I got to pronounce them correctly.
All right.
Skunjil, Mama Luke, and Jadrul.
And Jadrul.
And ringing any bells?
They're
No.
not ringing any bells, although there are certain Italian, swear words we're not going to use here on air, which we all learned growing up, of course. But the Mama Luke is a good one.
But before we go too much further, you like Skunjil?
Of course, yes.
You know, with a little olive oil?
Yeah.
Okay. We had to get...
Elvish was Italian, by the way.
Had to get through that.
Yes.
All right, so whenever anybody writes a book, obviously I've written books, the first question I ask, because I feel it gets into the conversation, is why did you write the book? I mean, you know a lot about Lewis and Tolkien. What made you say, this is a book I have to write?
Yeah, and I never thought I'd write a second book. The first book was on the impact of the First World War on their lives and their literary lives. I didn't think I'd write a second book because there's so many good biographies out there. But then as I got more into the subject matter and understood more about, okay, what is going on in the 1930s and 40s as they are writing their great imaginative works, what the historian likes to do is to contextualize.
Context is king.
Look at their great works and figure out what's going on politically and culturally as they're in this storm, the gathering storm, as Winston Churchill called it. And it really begins in earnest in 1933 when Hitler comes to power. And so I thought, I haven't read, of all the wonderful biographies that are out there of Tolkien and Lewis, I have not read a single biography, and maybe not even a serious scholarly article, that tries to examine their works in the context of the crucible of the Second World War. But I don't think you can appreciate their achievement unless you understand what they were going through.
Well, it's funny because there is real darkness in some of what Lewis, with whom I'm much more familiar, writes. He clearly has suffered. He knows pain. Yes. He lost his mother when he was very young. What he went through in the First War, the horror of the trenches. Yes. That's always there with him, isn't it?
Yes, but it also is with Tolkien, because he was an orphan by the time he's a young teenager. Mom and dad both pass. And he's at the Battle of the Somme in the First World War, the single bloodiest day in British military history, July 1st, 1916. Tolkien is at the Battle of the Somme. He lost most of his closest friends in the war, just as Lewis did. So they carried the scars of war. And I think it's one of the things that actually drew them together in friendship. Other things, of course, their love of epic literature, mythology, right? Heroic stories. That draws them together.
Say what?
So the Battle of the Somme, it's like you said, it's not only it's one of the bloodiest days in any war's history. It was one of the first major battles with the effects of fired artillery. Like there were craters full of bodies, and it had never been seen before in warfare until like this was the first war where like modern weaponry like changed the nature of the war, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's.
And
I can't imagine the brutality that's in there because it would be just a giant slaughterfest.
Yeah, and those experiences were influential to Tolkien when he wrote the war scenes in his work of the battles, how devastating they were, you know. So
devastating battles from personal experience.
Remember okay. The final battle of the First Age, the War of Wrath, that sunk a continent. Remember?
Yeah.
That inspired directly by the Battle of the Somme, Mother.
Balerion going bye-bye.
Yep.
Yeah.
1920s. They first meet in 1926. And pretty soon, pretty quickly, this deep friendship is going to emerge. But part of the point I'm making in the book is, I think the Second World War creates this sense of deep urgency that they've got to get on with their callings, their academic callings and their callings as writers of fantasy fiction, because they just don't know if they're going to survive. Right? From 1939, as you know, until about 1945, the survival of Great Britain is an open question. It's an open question.
You know, now, it's interesting, and this is because I'm an amateur.
I have not read this guy's book. He is sort of wrong with Tolkien. Tolkien was known, even through this period, for not like producing the amount of academic work and completing it that he should have. What he did was amazing, but they were expecting greater output. Like a professor of his standing, you expect greater output from, you know?
Sure.
And yeah, well, just so you people are aware of, Tolkien has a biography out there. You people, you know who you are. Tolkien's biography, the one I praise repeatedly, it's a really good one. And if you want to understand him, it's worth reading. So.
Historian, which still makes me an historian, but at least in some,
offend too many of your fans.
And I've got five honorary doctorates, which does not make me a doctor of anything. But I only say that because the idea, when you're dealing with history, we know that Hitler's defeated. We know that Churchill and England survived. Like, we know this, and it's very tough for us to entertain the idea that it might not have gone that way, or just to put ourselves in the context, as you say, of not knowing how it's going to turn out. That's hard. But it's vital, as you say, to understand these two men and what they're going through, and of course, not just the two of them. But let's talk about that for a minute, Joe, because that's a big thing. That when we think of England, it does seem inconceivable to us.
Inconceivable!
That it might not have survived. It really does seem almost impossible to comprehend that possibility.
But you remember the song "Unbelievable"? It's unbelievable, but you just don't do whatever.
Can't say it's
you ever heard it?
I mean, I might have at some point. I probably just don't remember it.
Then yeah, the joke would work. Yeah.
Okay. Well, get better jokes, Matt.
You can't handle better jokes.
Oh, trust me, I can.
For them, living in real time and not knowing the outcome, there's a series of letters that Lewis wrote to a couple of his friends. Dom Griffiths was one of them, where it's 1938, and it's in October of 1938. And he says, pray for me, because I was terrified to discover how terrified I was by the crisis. Now, you know, what's the crisis? In September, October of 1938, it's the Munich crisis. They're living through the Munich crisis. And the sense that Britain is on the edge of another world war, there's a sense of dread and gloom in the air. And Lewis he's terrified by the prospect of another war. He says he'd rather die than go through another war, but here he is.
Well, this is the other thing, too, about history and the way we perceive time. I mean, you and I are pretty much contemporaries, and so for us, World War II is ancient history. World War I is 1,000 years before World War II. To them, it was 10 minutes ago. That is tough to fathom, that the distance between 1918 and 1938 is less than nothing. I mean, as we sit here, that's 2000.
I just want to say, like, imagine living through 2 world wars. Like, the only 2 world wars that we've had so far. It's just like, that would be insane. It's not something people typically think about.
Imagine living through World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, you know? I mean...
Yeah. But I wouldn't put the Korean War and Vietnam nearly on the same pedestal as World War I or World War II.
Well, if you served or had relatives serving.
Well, sure. I'm not saying, like, in that time frame. I'm just saying if you participated yourself in World War I and you lived through World War II, imagine just the ramifications of just, like, raw PTSD hitting you at any moment in time, especially when, like, London's getting bombed and whatnot. Like, just imagine how crazy it would be to think.
Tolkien had an added fact, and his son was serving in the Royal Air Force, and his son was deployed in North Africa on campaign. Although, funny story, he still kept sending Christopher texts from Lord of the Rings and Silmarillion for Christopher to edit for him. And Christopher, he would would snail mail back and forth.
He emailed him.
Would snail mail back and forth. Travel. Chapters from Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion as they worked on them, you know. But it's a legit thing, the V bombs, and there's a book by a British journalist, William L or H, I forget, Shirer, Pulitzer Prize winning, and all that. Historians don't like this book because it's considered, it's definitively, like, they're just kind of jealous of it. But he was in the field in Germany in the lead up and beginning of the war. It's called The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. And it details a lot of the political and economic stuff that led to the, like, after World War I and how Germany was, the Germans had all persecuted economically, and how the Nazi Party arose, and the transition and the beginning of the war. And it's a very, like, I guess what the closest we would get as modern people will be the lead up to maybe I don't know, the lead up to Afghanistan and Iraq in 2000, you know, or something like that, because it's a crazy time period and the history and all the like pre-war brutality that occurs in Germany with the between the Nazis who were National Socialists and the other socialists who were running Germany at the time and all. That's a good book to read if you want to get insight into that.
Yeah.
5.
Exactly.
So it was just a moment ago.
That's right.
That they had crawled out of that abyss.
Yes.
Less than 20 years. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That'd be like if I was born during World War I and World War II started when I was like a teenager.
Well, prior to the Cold War, remember what the Cold War was?
Vaguely. I didn't really pay attention back then.
So the Cold War was
I know it
when
was
the
the whole
US
Russia and the
and
US were all
the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
The U.S. and the Soviet Union basically held hegemony over almost the whole world and had conflicts that weren't over war. But because they had that like war of espionage and economics, there were no major world wars breaking out. Now, prior to that, there was something like a world war breaking out every 20 years. Like if you go back from prior to World War One, there's I think it was the Russo-Finnish War or something like that. There's those major wars would break out constantly every 20 years, with minor wars in between, like the Spanish-American War and all that,
Yeah, that would be a lot of wars, but nothing quite to the scale as the World Wars.
And here they are.
Yes.
War kept scaling up.
Huh?
War kept scaling up, like we talked about before.
Well, yeah. Well, more people became involved in the same thing.
And they got more technologically damaging.
By 2 global conflicts, the most destructive wars in the history of humanity. Their lives are bracketed by those wars, and we cannot appreciate their literary achievements unless we understand
make it a little louder?
basic fact about their lives, right? But I don't see many authors or others really understanding that and pressing that, and helping us to understand it, and what an achievement it was for them to accomplish what they did in their writings in that absolute cataclysmic period from 1939 to 1945. Think about it, Eric. The Blitz on London, 76 consecutive nights of aerial bombing on the city of London, save one night. 76 consecutive nights. They're in Oxford. And so friends, family members, the evacuation of children by the thousands into Oxford. How does Lewis get the idea for The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? The evacuation of children from London because of the war to the home of a professor. That's when he first starts writing those lines during the Second World War, the opening lines to the line. So they are in the midst of the struggle. And I think for Americans, we're on the other side of the Atlantic, right? We don't get involved until Pearl Harbor. And there are some British historians who think we may not even have gotten involved had we not been attacked by Japan. We were so isolationist.
I'm pretty sure that's a fact.
Wow, you do?
At least I would. If I had to guess, yes, I would say that.
Yeah.
Well,
okay, I have to correct the record here. While we were not engaged militarily, except in certain small ways, prior to the outbreak of U.S. military entry into World War II, we had spent years supplying Russia and China and like our allies in Europe with tons and tons of material support. So much so that, and this is the reason we would have become involved, the Germans started sinking our passenger and transport ships in the Atlantic. And the reason that Japan attacked us in Pearl Harbor was because we were protecting our transport vessels going to China and Russia, or the Soviet Union back then, from Japanese effort to sink those ships, right? So that's what led to Pearl Harbor. But we were involved very heavily, just not militarily. Want to correct the historical record there.
Yeah, well, yeah. We were still partially isolationists, though.
For me and for those listening and watching, give us the chronology. In other words, when did Lewis, or what was Lewis writing during this period, and what about Tolkien? When did Tolkien start The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings? When did that process begin?
Yeah, let's take the second one first.
Yeah.
Tolkien writes The Hobbit in around 1933. He's got the draft of The Hobbit out. Doesn't get published till 1937. And of course, you know this because you've written some successful books. Your publisher is always demanding more. Give me a sequel. His publisher wants a sequel to The Hobbit. And he initially says, I have nothing more to say about hobbits. He literally tells him that. Nothing more to say about hobbits. But he starts writing it again when? At the end of 1937. So from the end of 1937 right through the Second World War, he is struggling with that manuscript. And we can talk more about how the war, I think, affected his imagination throughout. Well, Lewis, think about the screw tape letters, for example. This is a diabolical fantasy, right? Screw tape, the demon and a junior demon. How do we tempt and drag a human being, a human soul, into the pit of hell, right? How does he get the idea for the screw tape letters? I think you know this. It's 1940 in the fall, and Hitler now controls virtually all of Central and Western Europe. France has fallen. No sign of America entering the war. Hitler has just given a speech, I think, on a Friday. He's triumphant. The German people will follow him anywhere. And the speech, Lewis is listening to it. It's being broadcast by the BBC and simultaneously translated into English. He's with his friend, Dr. Havard, the family physician. They're listening to the speech on a Friday, Hitler's speech. It's all about, of course, conquest and his rage, his hatreds. Lewis says, actually in a letter to his brother, Warnie, he says, while the speech lasts, it's almost impossible not to waver just a little.
Wow.
Think about that. the power of the charisma of that individual. But then he says, in church on Sunday, he gets the idea for the screw tape letters. Not an accident, in my mind. Wow. Not an accident. A diabolical fantasy. But he's going to focus on not a global conflict, but the spiritual conflict going on for the soul of every human being. Now that's...
I will say, if you have not read the Screw Tip Letters, it's a fantastic book to read just to understand C.S. Lewis, and it's definitely recommended.
A deeply committed Christian author, remarkable man. But it's the speech. Yeah. It's the speech. It's Hitler's speech.
I absolutely never heard that. That's extraordinary. And so when does... Well, let's go back, actually. You mentioned the friendship.
Yeah.
I'm sure we've covered this at some point in one of our previous conversations. But, 1926, Tolkien is a Catholic Christian.
Yes.
C.S. Lewis is an atheist.
He's an atheist, yep.
Talk about that a little bit. Yeah. Their friendship.
Yeah.
They both obviously have the war in common. How did they become friends, or what began to draw them together before Lewis comes to faith?
It's a great question. One little thing that Tolkien did, he's a linguist, he's a philologist. He loves languages.
Yeah.
All kinds of different languages.
Yeah.
Icelandic was one of the languages that he knew and loved because of these epic sagas that were written in the original Icelandic. So he starts a little Icelandic group, a reading group that only Tolkien would do, and he asked Lewis to join him. And I think that was the beginning of the friendship.
Yeah.
Because Lewis also was stirred by the same kind of sagas. And you get the sense that they're having something is happening here in the friendship. One of the turning points, though, is when Tolkien sends to Lewis his early manuscript of the story of Beren and Luthien. The human and the princess. Go.
Wait, who sends the story?
Tolkien sends it to Lewis.
Yes, I was going to say.
It's an early. Tolkien sends it to Lewis.
I wasn't clear. So yeah.
So the elvish princess who lives eternally and the love relationship with the mortal man, he sends it to Lewis for his feedback. Lewis sends him like 12 pages of critique, and in the letter that he sends to Tolkien, he says more quibbles to follow. 12 pages of critique, but he loves it. He loves the story. And he's helping to see how it could be better. Tolkien incorporates some of Lewis's suggested edits. But think about what would happen if you had sent me an early part of your manuscript and said, I got time for that, Eric. I have time to read your manuscript, critique it. You'd interpret that in a certain way, right? He responds with this thoughtful critique, and you can tell that is a turning point, because what's Tolkien doing? He said that story was closest to his own life. His relationship with his own wife. It's kind of modeled on that. So it's a precious story to him, one of his most favorite stories of all the legendarium. He's sharing it with his friend Lewis. It's a turning point in the relationship. He realized there's a kindred spirit.
Well, now when you say it's one of the first, he invented the story.
Yes, Tolkien did, of course. Yes.
Okay. I mean, first of all, I want to comment on the idea of think of a world in which people are writing stories.
Yes.
We don't live in a world where people are writing stories. I mean, it's an interesting thing to me that there existed a market or a world in which one could write a story like that. Presumably, there's an audience for that.
He's reinventing fantasy for the modern
Not that there's anything like a Baron Luthien, which is, in my opinion, the best thing Tolkien ever wrote. But yes, there are people writing stories nowadays. That's the snobbishness of this guy coming through. Anyway.
Well, I mean, academics tend to have a bit of snobbiness to them, so I can't hold it against him too much.
Is what he's doing. He's writing he's writing really the first modern fantasy story, and he's showing future writers how you do it. And one of the ways you do it is you build it upon a whole history, a deep, rich, ancient history, so it has depth, has realism.
We're so familiar with that we're over familiar with it to the point where I realized that I'd never particularly liked reading fantasy.
Yeah.
And I think because most of it is not that good, because it's sort of trying to do what Tolkien did, but without his amazing talent.
Yes, yes.
So but he kind of invented the genre.
He really did invent the genre.
I don't know that I've invented any genres. Have you ever invented a genre?
Not lately.
I mean, it's an amazing thing.
How do you invent the genre?
Where does that come from?
Well, we have to say this, and I think your audience will appreciate this. Without their education, with their classical Christian education, think about it. Homer, Virgil, Dante, Milton, this is part of their intellectual furniture.
Yeah, there you
and
go.
you don't write fantasy with depth without that as part of your moral literary outlook. That's part of the reason I think we don't produce
actually,
works
no,
like
that's
that, right?
interesting. So to some extent, I mean, they're standing on the shoulders of, Dante and Milton
Beowulf.
and Homer and whoever wrote Beowulf. We'll never know.
I think you wrote Beowulf.
Unless, I think it was Mark Felt. He was he was the head of the FBI in the late '60s. I believe
a little side hustle.
I believe his name was Mark Felt.
Huh?
How do they mention Beowulf without mentioning Tolkien's legendary translation of Beowulf? Anyway.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll look that up on Wikipedia.
So, no, but it's just so interesting because when we think of those literary epics, that really is, I mean, we say he invented a genre, but he really was coming out of that.
And think about this, back to the friendship, and it ties in the genre business as well. Beowulf was probably the most important literary work in Tolkien's life. He translated it.
I didn't know that.
He taught on it for decades.
Well, there's your mention. You got your honorary mention of it.
There we go.
It was a huge part of his academic and literary life. And it's a story of this hero who's up against Grendel and it's one monster after another. Raw evil, radical evil is what Beowulf is up against. Tolkien is drawn to stories of that lone heroic quest, putting aside your own ambition, following your moral duty to save others against a radical evil. Lewis is drawn to the same thing.
You reference, The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, Screwtape Letters, The Abolition of Man, Lewis's Space Trilogy, the Narnia Chronicles. It really is interesting because there is something, particularly in the Space Trilogy, horrific, frightening. The Abolition of Man is similar to that, his short book, The Abolition of Man. There's no other word for it, it's evil. They really, really, truly see the evilness of evil in a way that most, I would say, almost no writers in the 20th century do the way they do.
Yeah, maybe Orwell, maybe George Orwell, perhaps.
Yeah,
perhaps. But again,
well, I mean, George Orwell's more or less writing prophecy at that point. I'm
or to the left, an instruction manual.
Yeah, I mean that could also be a thing too. But I think like George Orwell is gonna have a different viewpoint, but he still recognizes the evil, and that's where you get like 1984 and his other works from. It's just kind of like
evil. I mean, So I'll tell you phrase it that way. So Nietzsche makes this great point, and to me, he's like, if you understand philosophy in a true sense, you have to read Nietzsche's works. Okay, he said at one point, an evil deed is like a boil. It's obvious. I'm paraphrasing. You see it. It's very. It proclaims, "I'm here." Like you can't hide that giant boil that evil is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But bad thoughts are like fungus, like little fungi, and you can't really see any one of them. But uh, sooner or later, if you don't pay attention, you're covered by all these little fungi, all these insidious little, right? So you have the big evil, which Tolkien writes about, obviously, right? But then you have that insidious evil with the ring, you know?
Yeah.
And he writes about both forms of it. And I'm not as familiar with all of Lewis's work. I read the Chronicles of Narnia. He came out more of the book, but I read them all when I was like 11. So I don't remember, it's been decades.
Yeah.
Lewis, Lewis was obviously, because he did all the allegory, he was less, he was more overt in what he would like, you know, Aslan is Jesus and all that stuff, you know.
Yeah.
But uh, so I don't know if he wrote about the little stuff, the insidious evil, the way Tolkien called it up. Like I can't think of anything in Narnia even remotely comparable to the nature of the ring. You know what I mean?
Well, I would say that they're different. They're different aspects of evil, whereas Lewis focused more on, um, like how mankind can slip into evil, and it seems like it's like through temptation and stuff like that. But I mean, I know the ring does that as well, but like how he specifically goes through it and about it in his story, where it's more of showing like, hey, you're just like Eustace. You go for that
Yeah,
Turkish
that's
delight.
the big evil.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, but you and I are suckered in by that Turkish delight, just like Eustace was, and then, you know, Aslan comes in and he, you know, ransoms us out of it, and at the cost of his own life. Granted, that's obviously not the end, but it's like how we deal with that evil, and when other evil forces are involved, it's the difference of how they interact with it. Where Lord of the Rings, the ring, yes, it does tempt, but it's not like a universal temptation to everybody simultaneously. It's only on like an instance per instance issue. Where I think
no. Everyone, when you're near the ring,
yes, but I'm saying yes, when you're near the ring, that's my point. It's not a universal. It's not the ring existing does not tempt all of the beings on Arda simultaneously. It's only within a certain reach of them.
Yeah, no,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So like it universally tempts everyone except for Tom Bombadil. But I wonder what Goldberry would do with it. I don't know how that would affect her, but
probably plant it.
It grows a tree. Like a
tree
turns into the next Dark Lord.
Sauron conquers everything, comes walking in and goes, "Hi, Dilio, Tom Bombadil," because Sauron can actually sing, you know. "Hi, Dilio, Tom Bombadil." Goes, "Hi, hello, Sauron." Oh,
You slap you around, Dilio.
Yeah, you know.
But no, like the ring tempts you on an individual basis. So it affects the things immediately around you, and in that way, the evil that we experience is more of a. I want to say it's more of a personal affection upon those around us.
Well, no.
Not affection in terms of like normal type of affection, but like it affects those around us and us. And as long as we carry that evil, it's going to be a constant.
The ring's presence is like being in the cold with no jacket and hearing a whisper saying, "I can make you warm.
Yeah.
I can make you warm." You know, it's very insidious. And I didn't see anything like that in Narnia. Whereas the big part of evil, the sort of, submit to my will, conquering war and all that,
it wasn't
that was clearly
quite
in Narnia, you know?
Yeah, but like Narnia didn't really like it didn't really push into that kind of idea and concept. Like that concept didn't play a massive role, whereas you might say, excuse me, you might say that, Lord of the Rings, evil plays a much more grandiose position as it's part of the mythos as total. Whereas it could be just as simple in Narnia to be like, this group is bad and this group's good, and they're fighting each other for dominance.
Yeah.
And it's very, I want to say, almost like childlike simplicity to get down to the very nitty gritty of it without going into quite as narrowly of an epic as what you might expect from, say, Tolkien's work. So, but yeah.
Think about the political, cultural context. Lewis is writing the Space Trilogy, begins writing it 1938, 1939, 1940. You know what is happening. The rise of the totalitarian states, communism, Nazism, and they are ravaging the European continent, right? So what do we get, if I could read a few lines? Talking about radical evil from Paralandra now, right? The second in the series. And the description of the unman is really, it's horrifying.
Paralandra is, if somebody put a gun to my head at 2 a.m. and said, what's your favorite book? I might have to spit out Paralandra. I mean, that book is, I don't know anything that really can compare to it in the 20th century, but go ahead.
The temptation of the Eve character by this demonic character, the unman. There's nothing like it in modern literature. You feel like you're in the Garden of Eden, listening to the temptation, don't you? Here's a few lines. The description that Lewis gives of the unman. Tell me what comes to mind, Eric. It did not defy goodness, it ignored it to the point of annihilation. Ransom perceived that he had never before seen anything but half-hearted and uneasy attempts at evil. This creature was wholehearted.
Pops right into my head, Michael Dukakis. Oh my God!
The tank shot, right, with the helmet on the tank on the campaign. You remember the campaign, right?
So, it is funny though, because when you think about it, we really don't. That is one of the reasons that book convinced me of the unprecedented genius of C.S. Lewis to create that picture of evil that you just read.
Yes.
It is chilling.
It's chilling, but it's not just out of his imagination, right? It's at his doorstep. It's at the doorstep of England in 1940-41. They're expecting an invasion by the Nazis any day, and they're trying to prepare for it, right? So there's a form of radical evil on the political stage, and this is how we, again, help to appreciate their literary achievement. Right?
Well, he's still, what's fascinating to me is the prophetic quality of Lewis, that in The Abolition of Man, and in the last book in the so-called, in the Ransom Trilogy, he's talking about things, it seems, very contemporary. Like he sees where it's all going.
Yes.
Before, I think, anyone does.
Yeah, I think that's right. The hideous strength, and the way that science and technology will be used and abused in the service of what? The will to power. Well, welcome to our age, friend, the 21st century. Science and technology to dehumanize us, holding out the promise of the good life, of the perfect life. Here we are, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm tracking. It's extraordinary. So what are some of the things, some of the other things that you talk about in the course of this new book?
Well, with these men, I think we've got to try to appreciate the degree to which they felt like they had to push back against these ideologies through their writing. And I don't think that's been fully appreciated. And I've only taken a stab at it. Meaning, they're not going to just throw up their hands and say, well, totalitarianism, there it is. Modernism as a literary movement, the wasteland, I guess we just have to put up with it. Famous conversation around 1936 between the two of them. Lewis is a Christian by then. Their friendship is deepening. Lewis says to Tolkien.
Although I will say that Tolkien was always very salty that Lewis became a Protestant, not a Catholic.
Yeah.
It was always a funny little contention. I always enjoyed in their relationship because Tolkien was so upset about that. It was something that seems to be very minute. Like, it's like, well, he's a Christian. That's all you need to do, right? That's all you need. That's all you need. And then the next second, it's like, bloody Protestants.
Yeah.
Well, Tolkien
had if you read his biography, Tolkien had a sort of, his devotion to Catholicism was in part because of his mother, and the negative experience with his Protestant relatives when his father died, so.
Yeah, but again, that seems to be this issue with people in general, and I've had this conversation with people like Rollo and stuff, where if someone, and we'll break it to subcategories, like say a Protestant or Catholic or Eastern Orthodox or something, when somebody in that subgroup doesn't behave like the subgroup is supposed to behave. Like, so all three of those subgroups are quantified as Orthodox Christian. Like they're of the Christian faith, right?
Yeah.
So if the Bible says, hey, you know, do this and don't do this, you look at it and say, okay, well, I need to do these things and I need to not do these things. So when the time comes and you don't do the things you're supposed to do, or you do the things you're not supposed to do, people look at that and say it's the fault of the entire category, subcategory, or the entire category. If you go like from the three to the overall Christianity branch. So it's a strange thing to me, because if it's like, okay, Christians are supposed to help those in need. Well, if somebody doesn't do that, I would say they're not performing their Christian duties properly. But it doesn't mean that Christianity or all people in that category or subcategory, if you say it's Protestant, Catholic, or whatever, would really fit in that particular box. Because it's like, let's say there's a Protestant out there that doesn't do what they're supposed to do. Well, it doesn't mean all of Protestantism believes that. It could very easily contradict that entire concept, and it's like, no, you need to do this. And then typically churches will reprimand people who are ignoring those things and need correction and whatnot. It's like, you need to be biblically corrected with a firm but loving hand. And people outside of that viewpoint don't seem to understand that, like in Tolkien's perspective, if he's like, oh, but my Protestant relatives were not very nice to me, it's like, well, that has nothing to do with Protestantism. Because if they were Catholic, they could still technically have that same behavior. It wouldn't matter what faith they follow. It just means that they're not following that faith very well. So it's like, I personally find it strange when people make that argument, because it's like, I would never say that because a football team fan punches somebody in the bleachers or in the parking lot afterwards and starts a big fight, I would never blame the team for that. It's not the team's fault.
Well,
the team doesn't say, go out and punch other fans, go out and cause problems in the parking lot. That's not how that works. So people attributing those kind of things is weird.
In agreement with you. However, human psychology / biology shows humans always instinctually want to be part of groups. Okay.
Sure.
And not all humans
are tribalistic.
Of recognizing when they have some sort of primordial emotional response. So, you know, when I look at Tolkien's life and his issue there, to me, it's him at a deep level, on a level he can't recognize and override, saying Catholics versus Protestants, us against them, cause of experience as a child.
Sure.
And a lot of that sort of behavior comes from experience as a child, when you're not intellectually capable of defending your brain as it's forming a mind, you know?
Well, sure. I'm just saying that, like, the fact that people can't recognize it. Because, I mean, there's people who've wronged me. There's people I've wronged. Like, no one's perfect. But when I've never, I can't remember if I ever did. If I have, I'd be very wrong about it. But I can't remember ever going and saying, hey, said person wronged me, therefore everything they think they stand for or they believe is evil or incorrect. That just seems really weird for me to comprehend.
That's an intellectual choice. The way you phrase it requires all those concepts.
Well, sure.
You're not, like, you're smarter than that ever doing that, right? When you're 7 years old.
Yeah, but I would argue I'm not anywhere near as smart as, say, someone like Tolkien or C.S. Lewis. Okay. But the fact that Tolkien, maybe this was prior to his intellectual spike, but you think he would be like, let me think about this a little bit more. But I'm at least grateful he stayed friends with C.S. Lewis. I just know that
he was a great writer and philologist. Was Tolkien a mathematician? Was Tolkien a psychiatrist? I mean, I'm capable of recognizing the flaws in my favorite author.
Sure. I mean, I'm not saying he's perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just saying that it's strange to me, to someone who can be very brilliant in storytelling and understanding, and especially when he has multiple factions. Like, for example, when the Easterlings join sides with Sauron, it doesn't mean that every single Easterling is evil. You can understand that from just the story itself, which means that Tolkien himself understands that. But if
Yeah.
Tolkien views Protestantism as they would be equivalent to the Easterlings joining the evil one or whatever, he should himself be able to say, well, actually, the actions of a few does not equate to the whole being of that same mind and thought. And that he could have this later on in life, but maybe he just never thought about it. I don't know.
Well, it might be something, a connection you never thought about.
Sure, and I understand and recognize that. I'm just saying I find it weird, mostly because I overthink everything. But to me, that's something that would never have actually even been there to begin with. But I don't know. I can only think from the position that I understand and comprehend the world through the context in which I live. So when somebody else does or doesn't do something, I have no way to know that other people don't see things the way I see unless they mention those things.
Well, that's got to be the default assumption is that you don't. In other words, you can only see the way you see it, and other people can only see the way they see it. Now, some of us, I make a great effort to read a lot about psychology at one point, philosophy, and the mind and the way it thinks and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I find, not as much lately, but I used to find it fascinating, like to read about some famous people, like let's say Stalin or whatever, right? And to try to figure out their decision-making process, like what led them on the course, and then you could kind of see it, right? Like, Isaac Asimov is obviously, right, science fiction author.
Doesn't sound familiar, but maybe I know his works.
You don't know Isaac? Oh man,
not by that name.
Isaac Asimov. He's a scientist, like he was a Nobel level chemist. He was also the most prolific science fiction author of all time.
What did he write?
Wrote the Foundation series.
I know of the Foundation series. I never read it or anything.
Asimov wrote that and like 600 other books.
Sounds like Brandon Sanderson's got some competition.
Yeah. Anyway, one of the premises of the Foundation universe was that a guy named Harry, I can't remember his last name.
Balls.
Sorry. No, Harry something or other. Harry Seldon. Okay, he was a professor. He was a psychiatrist and a historian or something like that, and a mathematician. And it's like this is like 50,000 years in the future. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he invented something called psychohistory. Okay, where by studying all of the disparate groupings you can find in society, right? Meaning like people who like the color blue, people who like the Mets, people who walk left foot first, every grouping type of thing, every sub-society, and quantitizing it. Remember, the future has supercomputers and all that stuff. People tend to follow their groups, right? You can basically figure out the course of history, not what any individual is going to do, but what's in general is going to happen because people tend to follow their groups, right? So that's what led to the foundation. The creation of the foundation was a secret organization to use that technology to guide humanity through the fall of a kingdom, becoming like a space republic, whatever. That's the whole story. And the point is, he made up the concept of psychohistory. I want to say 50 years ago when he wrote that. Now we're seeing like AI is doing predictive behavior based on. It's like they took his science fiction concept and turned it into science. You know what I mean? And
well, I mean, when I say things like the way I view things, you and I have talked about the things like where being able to imagine things in your head versus people who can't and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I would put it to like a lot of the things that I think about and the way I think about them, I treat it like, imagine if you have a person who's kind of like Indiana Jones, right? He's an archaeologist. He goes and he finds stuff. He brings them back from temples that are lost for thousands of years or millennia, and he puts them in museums and stuff, right? But imagine this archaeologist who's not Indiana Jones, just someone like Indiana Jones. But every time he gets near treasure, there's like, in his mindset, there's a glow about it. No one else can see this glow, but he just assumes this is normal. he never questions it. He just assumes,
Yeah.
well, yeah, anybody else can see this. Like it's right there. Like how do you not tell? And then he goes and he finds all these wonderful findings, and he just happens to have this, what appears to be some form of psychic ability or whatever. And he's just like, I just know where the treasure is because there's like this treasure glow around it. And it just, I mean, the glow is a treasure glow, therefore there's treasure there. So I mean, it's pretty common sense. It's not like super difficult or anything. And there are other people who don't have this. Like nobody else has this effect. But he just thinks because it's been his thing since he was a kid, he just assumes everyone has always been like this and everybody understands and experiences the world the same way he does. So when he comes across people who are like, how do you do this? And he's like, oh, I mean, you see that glow too. And they're like, no, I don't. And they're like, oh, well, there's a treasure here. And then they go over, they dig it up, they find this treasure and they say, hey, look, it's treasure. Wow, you're really good at this. And I'm like, well, I mean, isn't this how all the archaeologists find stuff? And it turns out, no, that's actually not, in fact, how all the archaeologists do things. Yeah. So
only you, Alabama Smith.
I know. Alabama Smith. That's pretty good. But no, it's that kind of thing is like how I view a lot of stuff because I see the world operate in a particular function. And then I'm not going to say this is like all the geniuses of the world, like myself. We all experience the world differently from the rest of you plebeians. I'm not going to do that. But it does seem like there are a lot of standout people that have such a different way of viewing the world that you can't really expect the rest of the world to comprehend their viewpoints because they don't see the world the same way. And I think from Tolkien's perspective, that's one thing, and C.S. Lewis from a different perspective, that's another thing, which is probably where they both had their own viewpoints on which side of Christianity they should be in on. And they had those viewpoints the other didn't understand. And thus, when one goes to one, the other one gets upset or whatever. Like, and I mean, my friends get mad at me all the time because I just have a view of the world where other people don't quite sit in the same department, we'll say. So, yeah, we'll just go ahead.
Name for Tolkien. Well, Tollers, if they're not going to write the kinds of books we want to read, we shall have to write them ourselves. They're going to get in the game, right? And they're going to deliberately push back against these dehumanizing tendencies, both in literature, in modern literature, modern art, but also the political ideologies. And they're going to re-enchant the moral imagination, as different authors have noted, right?
Well, the reason I see them as just giants, you know, in the 20th century is because, I mean, you mentioned Orwell. Other than Orwell, I see the 20th century as an abdication of this, you know, call to arms. That most people in the 20th century, as you said, they just either described the decay and the horror, or just rode it like a wave without, you know, what they did was unique.
It was they created what you could call a beachhead of resistance at Oxford with the Inklings, the other Christian authors that they pulled together in their ranks, Charles Williams, Hugo Dyson, and others. Tolkien, Lewis at the center of this thing. It is a deliberate haven, beachhead of resistance. And they have no idea where their writings and their scribblings are going to go. They just know they have to try to do something. And here we are talking about their works, you know, 75, 85 years later, right?
Well, it seems inevitable that unless you have a deeply biblical worldview, you wouldn't know what to make of the evil. You wouldn't even be able to call the evil evil, really. You could just...
I will say with the Inklings and everything and how they had their gentlemen's clubs, which I really do wish we had the olden gentlemen's clubs and not the newer gentlemen's clubs.
Well, the old ones still exist. They're just for like rich people.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying, like, I wish we had something like that for just the everyday American that they can go and just like, hey, we're gonna go to this place. It's got books, it's got studies, it's got conference rooms and stuff where people can get to gather around, enjoy one another's company, and just talk about things that matter to them that might not matter to anybody outside of their little group. I mean, now it's more like a coffee shop does that. And it's just like, but the coffee shop's really open. It's not very exclusive. And you want it to be somewhat exclusive to be like, okay, this room, we rent this room out like every month. and we have our meetings in there, we do our stuff and whatnot, and then but it's just a relaxing thing. And in Tolkien's world, they smoke pipes next to a hearth, and they would discuss either their schooling stuff or the past or what projects they're working on, and then ideas. Like, that just sounds like a relaxing environment to be in. Nowadays, it's Dungeons and Dragons. So it's just kind of like, I kind of miss the old stuff where the newer stuff's more about, clubs and strippers and stuff. And it's just like, not quite the same stuff.
No, maybe you don't like it.
Yeah.
But they seem to see to the bottom of it and to see that there is an answer to it.
Yes, and I think if I could quote from a little place here from Lewis, I think I can find it pretty quickly. It's from his radio broadcasts, actually. Remember, he's giving the BBC radio broadcasts.
Yeah.
He's asked by the religious director of the BBC, Britain's at war, people need to be encouraged. This is how different the BBC was back then. We need someone who has the ability to communicate.
That's a burn.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how the BBC used to be.
The Christian faith to our nation in ways that can be understood, right? You remember how he starts out the first line in Mere Christianity, the radio broadcast, 7:45 in the evening, 1941. The first line, which is the first line in Mere Christianity. The first line in the radio broadcast, Eric, is, everyone has heard people quarreling. Everyone has heard people quarreling. An amazing place to begin. He's trying to reach this mass audience. He's beginning with the moral law. We have a sense of how life ought to be, how you ought to behave. You're violating the norms. We violate our own norms. He starts out with the moral law, and he winds up sharing about Jesus and the great gift of salvation. He doesn't start with Jesus. He starts with, everyone has heard people quarreling. What a gift, the apologist's gift that he has. But he realizes that that's the great question, is the fall. Eric, Lewis keeps coming back to the doctrine of the fall in virtually everything he is writing from 1938 through 1945. He keeps coming back to the doctrine of the fall. It's in the Abolition of Man. It's in the Screwtape Letters, right? It's in the Great Divorce. It's Mere Christianity. It's in the Problem of Pain. It's all over the place. He feels like we've got to reintroduce this biblical doctrine of creation and fall. That is the clue, as he put it, the clue to the meaning of the universe, right?
It's impossible not to lament where England is today when I hear you talk about, the BBC inviting him. Inviting him.
More burns. Apply water to burn now.
To talk about Christian faith on the BBC to help this nation in the war effort.
To defend Christianity.
That's an extraordinary thing.
Bold in their determination to...
Okay, we're gonna...
You don't have the YouTube account?
That's built into the actual video.
Oh.
I think this guy's section of this is from Cornerstone University. So I think it's a built-in ad to the video. It's not a video. It's not a separate one. It's not where I hit skip ad and it goes to the next ad. It's built into the video.
It's just built in.
Yeah.
Chronicles and Tolkien's Lord of the Rings trilogy is how they have lasted compared to all the other books that have been endlessly hailed as great. I mean, is there a soul on planet Earth?
Well, I think I answers. I respect the works of C.S. Lewis, but it is not comparable to Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Those two books, the Lord of the Rings, before they cheated on the list for Google, and decided it was going to be 3 separate books.
Yeah.
Is the most published. The only books in the history of the world that have more copies floating around are the Quran and the Bible. That's it. Then it's the Lord of the Rings, right? And it's and the next close, like if you have the entire rest of the entire Harry Potter series together, it has not sold as much as the Lord of the Rings has.
Yeah.
Right. And then the Hobbit is like number 5. Okay, so the guy has 2 of the top 5 books of all time in terms of published copies, right? And he's probably the most, I would say, well, leaving aside religious stuff, the most respected author or most accomplished author in the history of humanity.
Yeah, it's a world we live in.
You know, Lewis deserves more publications. I agree, but his works have not.
Well, I think
You know,
Lewis's focus was also in a different place than where, say, Tolkien was.
Yeah.
Tolkien was big on the mythos and wanted to make the myth, the myth, the myth. And it's like, okay, well, you got the myth, the myth, the myth, but what about the moral implications, which is what more C.S. Lewis, being an apologist, be more into the underlying things like the Screw Tape Letters, Mere Christianity, that kind of stuff. His goal was entirely different. When he does have that friendly competition with Tolkien, that's where he gets the Chronicles of Narnia. But his goal wasn't to be like, I want my entire writing career to be this thing. His goal is, I'm an apologist for the Protestant Christian faith, but Christian faith overall, first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, when it comes to academia, I would say that C.S. Lewis is more well known than Tolkien. Not saying that Tolkien. No, I'm saying explicitly in works he did academically wise.
No, I don't disagree there. I'm not arguing that.
So
the exception being Beowulf, but
well, yes, like I mean, I recognize J.R.R. Tolkien's academic achievements, I guess the best word.
Yeah.
I recognize those things.
I'm not arguing with your concept, though.
Yeah, but like Lewis is more academically well known, whereas Tolkien's more everyman well known. So, where Lewis aimed his sights was on like the populace understanding things, and he would write much smaller books that had a lot of impact, as opposed to Tolkien, who wrote entire mythoses and legendariums and stuff that still had a massive impact, but it wasn't necessarily the same type. Like when you read The Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit or The Silmarillion or any of the other side tales, you're not coming away with anything like great moral questions being answered to the extent that you would if you went to C.S. Lewis. So
I disagree with that, but I'm not going to argue here. Let's get on.
I mean, you are arguing, but that's the point.
I'm saying let's just keep on with the video, because we could do a sidebar on that for like an hour, you know?
Damn, those are rookie numbers. Bump those numbers up.
Well, we don't have Sage or Oda, Sage with us to, like, if you and me could do an hour with Sage here, that's like 3 hours, you know?
Well, you and I would be 2 hours. Me by myself would be an hour, so
yeah.
Finnegan's Wake or Ulysses, who's not an academic.
Yeah.
These books that they wrote,
yes.
You know, if the world should last 1,000 years, I'm assuming kind of like Beowulf, we will be reading these books. So the question then is why?
And I only have a partial, it's a fabulous question. I only have a partial answer to that. The enduring power and attraction of their works. How do we explain it? And I think it's a combination of things. I think it's a combination of what I said earlier. There is this great intellectual literary foundation, the classical Christian tradition, that is part of it. They're drawing on these great works, these universal themes. That's why we consider them great works. Human nature.
Actually, there is an answer to that.
Heroism.
Tolkien answered it. Now, I don't have it, because on my phone, I can't just get the quote and read it to you. But the opening line to A Baron and Luthien, which I know I read on the channel before, answers that question about endurance and what will endure and all, you know, so, yeah.
Cowardice, right? Sacrifice for a noble cause. Those themes are embedded in some of our great. So that's part of their background. But also they've lived through so much. Their writing now it's being shaped through the crucible, especially now the Second World War. World War I also plays a role, and I think during the Second World War, both wars are in play in their minds. How could they not be? Because it was only 20 years earlier, and they had painful memories of the First World War. I think the memories of heroism and the horror of the First World War and the lived Second World War is playing on their imagination. That's part of it, but of course we have to say, because it's absolutely true, the Christian foundation that these men had to imbue their mythic works with this profound understanding of the human condition, our nobility and our tragedy. There aren't many writers who can do that.
Well, I mean, first of all, they have just the outrageous talent. It's just an outrageous gift from God. There's no, you can't make yourself more talented by hard work.
Oh, I thought you said something.
It doesn't work that way. They have this outrageous talent, but their Christian worldview, it's not just a Christian worldview. It's a particularly heroic, I would say it's an authentic Christian worldview. It's not just a theological worldview. Because what they were doing in writing these books, was standing against the juggernaut of cynicism.
Yes.
When I think of the 20th century and modernism, they stood against it.
Yes.
They said, no, there is hope.
Yes.
There is truth. There is goodness. Because, it just seems to me that what makes them stand out so much is that I can hardly think of anyone else who stood against that, juggernaut of cynicism, as I put it. They really were vilified by the intellectual elites for doing that.
Yes, because the cynicism, as you rightly point out, it was almost pathological. Almost pathological in the 1920s and 30s. The idea that people could take charge of their destiny in some way, that they could fight the great forces around us, the forces of evil, that the individual really mattered. All of that had become undone in the trenches of the mechanized slaughter of the First World War. And so they refuse to give in to that cynicism. And they are so deliberate in their writings. What do? They take this idea of the epic quest, the epic hero, and they reinvent him for the modern mind like no one else was even trying to do. And they executed that through their writings in ways that were just so powerful and resonant. And also, Eric, how they were describing in their stories the fight, the struggle against evil and the darkness, it seemed to be confirmed by their life experience in the Second World War. And I think it's part of the reason their works have such a resonance. It speaks to the modern condition. So their heroes are not two-dimensional heroes. I mean, think about Frodo and Sam, the struggle as they're on the way to Mordor. I mean, at the end, without spoiler alert for your audience, I mean, Frodo, in a sense, fails in his quest. He succeeds, but he fails. The ring is mine, and puts it back on his finger, right? And then it's Gollum who bites the ring, falls into the cracks of doom. So as Tolkien described that, a sudden miraculous grace is what rescues all of Middle-earth. A sudden miraculous grace.
I believe the term is called a eucatastrophe.
Boy, that really...
What?
You brought it up. Good callback. If you guys haven't watched our previous video.
I mean, eucatastrophe is a Tolkien thing, but yeah.
But he is referring to, and we've had discussions about this on the show, actually. I think 6, 7 months ago, maybe. So when Frodo falls to the ring, tries to keep it, and Gollum steals it and takes it to the precipice of Mount Doom, where he's being fall by the ring, and he's not going to throw it in, because everyone did what was all humanly possible to get the ring there. And it's humanly impossible to throw the ring into the fires of Mount Doom. Impossible by any human, okay? That allowed Yahweh to intervene.
Or elf or dwarf, I'd like to point out, but yeah.
Or Eru, as he was called in Tolkien.
Yeah.
To intervene with a miracle and basically shove Gollum in the volcano. Yeah, so,
That's Tolkien. Tolkien's words, not mine.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it's also, I think the reason his work has such appeal is that it's right.
Yes.
In other words, you know it has to be grace.
Yes.
Hard as we might try, in the end, we definitely will fail.
Yes.
Apart from
The left or the right?
The little Canty, whatever his name is. If I have time to read his books, I will.
The guy that left?
The guy, not the guy who's on screen right now. The actual interview.
The other guy. Yeah. This is the interviewer.
He seems like he read more than The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. He clearly read at least a Silmarillion, Unfinished Tales, and Tolkien's letters. So
Well, he did
You see the
a
show?
biography on C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, so I'd imagine he'd be familiar with their work.
Yeah, but not everyone dives into the history of Middle Earth.
Well, I
That's a
know,
lot
but
of
I'm saying
material.
like he probably in preparation to understand the mind of the men he's trying to build a biography on, he's probably gonna go in and read and be like, okay, here's the backstory about growing up.
Yeah.
Here's the backstory about the
Yeah.
wars. Here's coming to the conclusion of these great works of literature and what are these works of literature, and then as he goes into those works of literature he's like, oh well, here's how this connects to this, which has connects to this. I can understand where they came from because X, Y, and Z, which is the signs of a good biographer.
Well, I'm just saying he's conversant with the subject matter. A lot of people talk about Tolkien, for good or for ill.
Yeah.
Grace.
Yes.
And so when you read that, you go, yes.
There's no triumphalism here. It's the lowly, frightened, indecisive hobbit who'd rather be in the comfort of his hobbit hole and rather not leave it. And boy, does that relate to you or me? I don't know about your hobbit hole. I kind of like mine.
Oh my gosh.
Actually,
Oh my God.
on that note, Peter Jackson did not put in the movie my favorite scene in the entire Lord of the Rings. Okay, it's when Bilbo, when they're all arguing about the ring, Bilbo walks up and says, "I'll take it to the mountain." And the lowly, indecisive hobbit, like he mentioned there, the old man, 150 years old, is willing to step up and do the job. The lowly, the lowest guy in the totem pole there. That's seen in the book, not in the movie, unfortunately. But that's an example of what this guy is saying.
Yeah.
Gosh. Well, it really is interesting because it does. Maybe you can answer the question, but the question to me is, why did the two of them stand as they did when nearly everyone else did not, could not, was not willing to? I mean, again, you think of the intellectual tradition, you can go all the way back to Matthew Arnold's Dover Beach. This cynicism about faith that was there, already with the Victorians, and it carries on, obviously, into the 20th century. And it's corrosive, it's pernicious. And so to get to World War II, and to somehow, despite all of that, be able to stand the way they did, not triumphantly, as you said, nonetheless heroically. What do you think it was about these two men, or do you think that their friendship was part of that? Because it is so hard to stand alone.
Yes, I think that's exactly part of the answer. I don't think either of those men could have accomplished what they did in the literary works without the help and encouragement of each other. And Tolkien is very explicit about this. He says in several of his letters, for a time, C.S. Lewis was his only audience for The Lord of the Rings, and he read out virtually every chapter to C.S. Lewis and to the Inklings of The Lord of the Rings in composition. And Lewis is always saying, give me more, Tollers, give me more, you can do better, right?
How amazing. I mean, we just have to
imagine if all the writers in the world now would do that instead of trying to like one up each other. We'd have such better literature.
say, how amazing to have a friend that would encourage you, and that the whole world has benefited as a result of the encouragement of C.S. Lewis to his friend. That's a big deal.
That's right. He says explicitly, I never would have brought it to a completion without the encouragement of C.S. Lewis. He never would have finished the work without him, and I think that's probably true. I think there's another quality here, and is a quote from C.S. Lewis. After Tolkien finishes writing The Lord of the Rings, the manuscript, Lewis has the manuscript, and he says, I've drunk the rich cup to the bottom. And he says, I'm going to try to quote it from memory. He says, now, so much of your whole life, Tolkien, writing to Tolkien now, talking about the Lord of the Rings, so much of your whole life, so much of our joint life, so much of the war is now, in a way, made permanent. I mean, do we even grasp what he's saying? I think he's saying somehow, hidden in the pages of The Lord of the Rings, is something of their shared journey together, because they lived through this absolute cataclysm.
I would say I think the same thing explicitly, because when you read the books, even more so than just watching the movies, but if you read the books, while the movies did show a great deal of sorrow, grief, pain, trials, tribulations, etc., the books really emphasize it a lot better, I think. And
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to emphasize on what you're about to say. Like, I have legit criticisms of I have of Lord of the Rings adaptations, right?
Yeah.
But let's leave that aside, right? Let's leave the degree of canon adherence aside, right? My biggest legit complaint about Lord of the Rings movies, and you had to do it as a movie, right? Is why Lord of the Rings should really be like a TV miniseries.
Yeah.
One season for each subsection. Is it felt like in the novel it was like a year plus, roughly.
Yeah.
In the movie, you got the sense that from the point that Frodo left Hobbiton, he got to Mount Doom in like an hour, like 2 days later or whatever.
Well, not quite that
Like,
fast, but yeah.
You know what I mean? It was so rushed. Like there was very little.
I'd say they make it seem like it took like a month, maybe.
Yeah, and for scale, when Pippin and Merry were kidnapped, Aragorn, Legolas, and Aragorn, yeah,
Aragorn, Gimli, you mean?
Gimli, they ran after them without sleeping for 2 weeks in the book. So that was like the point is like that's my biggest. And so when you were saying like how did you phrase it? I don't know how exactly you phrased it, but that sense of pacing, which is non-existent in the book, adds to what you're saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It really like
it emphasizes a lot more than what the movies did. But
yeah,
when it comes to like, we're pursuing our enemies for 2 weeks without rest, and this, well, like your friends are captured and you need to go stop these evildoers from, taking them away. And then you show up and then you find that the force that you were hunting all this time has been destroyed.
Yeah.
And now you're like, what happened to my friends? Are my friends okay? And you're like distraught because you think maybe they aren't, maybe they are not okay. And then you do some little bit more deeper digging on the situation, and then you find out, oh, they're actually doing okay. They're in good shape. They're with a very safe group of people. And like the relief you'd feel from that, I'd probably sleep for 4 weeks after that if I was the person doing that. But
the book allows you to have emotional impact.
Sure, but I'm saying like even things with like Boromir, Faramir, to some extent Denethor, like the grief, the loss, the Rohirrim loss of Theoden, Eowyn being injured. I don't want to say broken, but I guess broken is a fitting word. The House of Healings, the grief of the loss of life from man.
Yeah.
Like all that stuff just reeks of their historical understanding of their own past. And it's like, that's intense. So if you were to, like, let's say one day AI gets to the point where you type in a script or a book and it generates that book word for word, picture for picture, 110% perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have some freaking rivers of tears of people watching stuff like that, because it's going to emotionally just wreck us, because we see the somewhat limitations. Like we see like, oh, well, look, it's a sad part of a movie, or it's a sad this, or a sad, oh, look at the puppy dies in this movie, oh, it's so sad, I can't watch it. But like to actually be able to understand and comprehend the backstory, and then be like, look, these people lost friends, they saw horrors you can't imagine since they haven't been recounted since that time. I mean, one could argue maybe the Nagasaki and Hiroshima, but you haven't seen the horrors, because I don't think those left bodies behind. Whereas World War I, how you mentioned earlier, having entire craters, the Battle of Somme, like craters of bodies and body parts, and just the vomit-inducing just brutality of war at the time. Mm-hmm. It's just like, I hope my words are making like someone queasy a little bit, because it's a billion times worse than that. And that you take that and insert it into something like The Lord of the Rings or The Silmarillion, which is technically even more bloodier.
Yeah.
But the sheer volume of just destruction and emotional fatigue and sorrow and sadness, it's unfathomable. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it would be easier for those of us who read the books and be like, I never experienced that myself, but I could potentially understand this burden, this weight, which you might equate to something like Frodo's weight is Tolkien's own weight of all these things he's been carrying with him for years on end. And when he gets to the end, it feels like a weight's lifted, but at the same time, the shadow still remains, and he's always conscious of it. And then the rest of his life, that's the way it is. And then when he dies, he's going to the Undying Lands, kind of a thing. So I feel like that could be something Tolkien himself would say, yeah, I mean, I had this consistent weight. I saw friends of mine die, men I didn't even know, but even then I saw how they died. It was horrendous, whether it be poison, whether it be being shelled, whether it be a number of just horrific ways to die, and warfare just being so brutal and ugly. Being able to understand that the professor had some serious, the easiest way to say is he had trauma, but he handled it a lot better than some would have probably, because he had an outlet, and that outlet he also had his friends like C.S. Lewis and the other Inklings to encourage him. And that's another thing, like when I mentioned the gentlemen's clubs, like how they had back in the day where the Inklings would get together, sit in front of a fireplace and be like shooting the breeze and whatnot. That's a good place for someone, whether it be like an AA meeting or a PTSD meeting or something, where people can get together and say, we've experienced this, but because I'm amongst my fellows and those who are fellow sharers of this grief, distraughtness, whatever you want to call it, because we're amongst each other, we can go on. And because I know there are people that relate to me because they went through the same stuff. C.S. Lewis lost people in the war amongst the trenches and amongst, the shells and everything, just like Tolkien did. Close friends, or even just acquaintances or people that he knew one day he was joking with at the lunch table at the camp, and then the next day he sees their body in 5 different places. It's just like they all went through that, so being able to bond with each other and know, like, yeah, you know exactly what I'm feeling, so I can be better around you than I can if I'm just anywhere else, kind of a thing.
Well, Tolkien was great at writing all the characters, even the ones let's stick with the Lord of the Rings to keep this simple, but even the minor characters, you got a good sense of what they were suffering through with the war and with the trials.
Well, even Smeagol and Gollum were suffering throughout this process, and when you look at, say, the movies, people don't think of Gollum as someone who's suffering. They see him as somebody who's evil with ill intent, which is not necessarily untrue. It's just that evil intent was there because of the suffering.
Yeah.
Like the rise of Gollum is literally caused by suffering.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting topic. So to use another franchise to make this case a little easier, I think, like, I'm a big fan of Naruto. It's my second favorite legendarium, right? So you remember the fourth Shinobi War, right? How each villain led to a bigger. No, talking after that with Obito, Madara, Kaguya.
Oh,
right? Yeah. Well, even start with Pain, right? So each tier of villain, you had Nagato, which is Pain, then Obito, then Madara, then Kaguya, right? Mm-hmm. And you find out when they fight the villain that every one of them was formed by these horrific experiences, and that led them to this dark path. Nagato is a survivor of Uzushio, which is he's an Uzumaki. People don't realize that he's an Uzumaki. His parents were exiled. Then Konoha Ninja kill his family. Then Madara rips his eyes out and sticks the Rinnegan in him. Spoilers for Naruto, guys. Spoilers. And he goes through all that. gets his best friend. Remember, the same thing that killed Reen, where she ran into the Chidori, Yahiko runs into Nagato's blade, symbolically. And so that's his level. Like, and you learn it, and then Naruto talking to Jutsu to him with Ninshu, brings him back from the dark side. Then they fight Obito, and you find out that Madara set Obito up to go insane, literally, right? Remember with the whole Rin thing? And we find out that, right? Then so Obito comes back from the dark side, right? Before sacrificing himself at the end. Spoilers, guys. Spoilers. Then you get Madara out, and we find out Madara, for all his amazingness as a character, was formed by, again, this Black Zetsu dick who's been ruining his whole life, right? Spoilers, guys. Spoilers. And then finally we get to Kaguya, right? And we think she is the root of all evil, but then we find out she comes from an alien species who's going to come to the planet and wipe out all life. And that's why she's trying to generate all this chakra so she can defend against them. You know what I mean? So we find
that right there's like literally the Star Wars theory of like Palpatine's actually conquering the entire galaxy. Yeah. So when the Uzon Vong show up, that he can have all these Death Stars to repel them.
The point I'm getting at is Tolkien, like Kishimoto, has these villains. Even Sauron was once a good guy and became corrupted through his love of order, and Melkor suckered him in, so to speak.
Yeah. Sweet talked him.
These villains aren't necessarily evil, like in Doctor Who. There's a villain named Sutek who literally says, "Oh, your evil is my good." Like he's not like driven by some sort of dark past. He's like, I'm doing the right thing by disintegrating everyone. You know what I mean? Like very few villains, even in real life, are like that. Like
very few villains open up honestly about what their reasons are.
Like if you pick the worst. I'm not going to name any names. Well, pick the worst villains you could think of, right? And go whether they're big ones like evil world leader types, or like criminal types, right? And go back and find their child, and you'll find people who are essaying them and beating them, and like this is like it.
They experienced a rough form of life as opposed to
like this is the sort of the sin we're born into in the world, that we have to repent with, with baptism and confirmation and I mean, I know I don't want to make this a advertisement. We're talking about Christianity though, right? So, but that's what Jesus saves us from, so to speak, the sin of the world that we're born into, and it doesn't take away the fact that a person chose to do evil. That's a sin that they commit. Whether fictional people like, say Sauron or whatever, or real people like, Stalin, right? It doesn't take away their sin, but it makes you understand that, like, you can't just stop by taking out the bad guy. You know what I mean? We have to work on the circumstance that generates the bad guy.
It's not the bad guy who's the end all be all gonna be the worst thing ever. It's how like what created the bad guy. That's the problem. And it's once again the thing that Crimson and I argued about is you can't use like legality to change circumstances. Like it's something where people have to come to the realization themselves and change the behavior, change their viewpoints, change their way of thinking. And you can't just use law and just be like, which is ironic considering his name's Crimson Law, but you can't just take that, like if someone's participating in a behavior that's legal but is kind of morally reprehensible, you can't just be like, well, we'll just make that illegal. It's like, well, that doesn't mean people are going to stop doing it. You need to the only way to cure that problem is to make people not want to do that, to not want to participate in that, to not be a part of that.
You have to.
It's a matter of the heart. It's not a matter of just legalizing things out of existence.
Yeah, like it's a fine line. Like, and we don't get into a lot of politics. We talk about politics. We don't get into it here, but we mostly agree. Everyone on this channel is in almost perfect political agreement about in general stuff. So this isn't some place we have a closet lefty who doesn't fight with us or whatever,
Matt's the closet lefty.
Yeah. But so that, like, you have to analyze everything you want to make legal or illegal and say, is it hurting a third party in any major way? And if it's not, then you have to say, is it worth making it illegal? That's why I think a lot of drugs should be legalized, not because they're good for you, but because it's cheaper to have rehab than jail. You know what I mean? Like if someone commits a crime while on drugs, they go to jail. If someone's just doing drugs, they should go to rehab because it'll cost 10 times more to put them in prison for 5 years, and they come out. They're going to come out. They're going to come out still using drugs.
The problem, yeah, and I agree with you, but the problem is it's more nuanced than that because some drugs have a much higher problematic existence.
I'm speaking generalities here just to keep the.
Well, yeah, I know, I get that, but I mean, this is I would aim it instead of at drugs, I'd aim it more like alcohol, which is a more understandable thing because like alcoholism's a very real thing. Alcoholism is a very destructive force in families and relationships and decision making, a lot of things like that, and.
Well, but 95% of people who drink alcohol do have any problems with it.
Well, I know, but I'm saying like you might not have a problem with the alcohol in your body and whatnot. I mean, it's just literal toxins after you build up so much of it. But the relationship you have with your kids, the relationship you have with your spouse, the relationship you have with your friends and family, your neighbors, like your behavior, alcohol inflames your emotions. So if you're in good emotions, it can boost those emotions. If you're having bad emotions, it can boost those emotions. Behaviors that you wouldn't normally have can come out because of alcoholism. Like it's a very delicate thing, and it's funny because you got the biblical mandates of like, don't get drunk, but it doesn't say anything about not drinking. It just says don't get drunk, because the drunkenness is where you get into the problem child aspects. And
plus the Bible tells you what's wrong, not like the Bible says don't commit murder, doesn't it? Don't kill people.
Well, yeah, it says these are the things that are harmful to you and yours, and not just yours in terms of like it harms your kids, but it's also harming you, because now your kids will look at you a particular way, and you're going to look at that and say, and well, I mean, it's going to say like your kids are going to look you away, and that's going to hurt your soul, because now your own children are looking at you like you're some monster.
Yeah.
The alcoholism's put you in this position because you couldn't control your own desires.
Yeah, so you have to deal with alcoholics, right?
Yeah.
95% of people who drink alcohol are not alcoholics.
Sure, that's what I'm saying. I was saying it's much akin to what you were saying with drugs, but it's easier to.
Oh yeah.
It's easier to explicitly state it through alcoholism, because alcoholism is something everybody can kind of universally be like, yeah, I've worked with an alcoholic, or yeah, my cousin's an alcoholic. Whereas when you get to drugs, it's like, I don't really know anybody who does drugs, so who am I supposed to compare this to? Like it's not as street level knowledge in that regard, at least from where I am.
People, maybe you don't, but a lot of people know someone who does drugs.
Well, I mean, I know people who do drugs. I don't know people who do drugs because I don't hang out with people that do drugs.
Yeah,
I don't really hang out with anybody in general, but
to avoid our like deep sidetrack, to get back to a point I was making, I think we agree on, is these things we want to prohibit in society with law, like you were saying with the other guy you were arguing with. You have to be very careful. Like, are you making more of a problem with the prohibition than you are by having it and having treatment?
Well, it's not like, even so much are you making more of a problem, is it's more of, is banning this legally something that's actually going to solve the problem, or is it going to just continue it, just make more people bad? Because the more laws you have, the more bad people you make.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have 20 laws, we're going to have less bad people than if you have 2,000 laws. 2,000 laws means that you can become a criminal without ever even realizing it, because there's no way for you to keep track of all 2,000 laws. There's, like, lawmakers can't keep track of it. They'll try to pass laws they already have in the books because they can't keep track of all the freaking laws. Like, there's too much law and not enough order because they didn't keep their laws in order for them to actually know what they actually have. So the more bureaucratic red tape you get, the more you can turn everybody just into a potential victim of the laws. Not like people are out there doing actual crime and actually like harming others. Sure. But it's the people who aren't, and they're caught in the crossfire because they don't know any better. Like if tomorrow they pass a law stating that, you have to drive in the middle of the road and leave the sides for people to go around you. Well, the average person's not going to know that law's been changed. They're going to drive on whatever side of the road in their area, whether it be, Britain's on the wrong side of the road or America on the right side of the road. They're not going to know that until they get pulled over and ticketed and potentially arrested or charged, whatever the case, endangerment, whatever BS excuse you could think of, all because they don't know that law is a thing, but the people who are trying to enforce it, because they're trying to pull in money, because the department needs funding, and yada. I'm not going to get into it, but point being,
any lawyer will tell you, bro, that if not you, I mean people listening, that everyone is constantly. There's so many laws in each state that everyone is constantly violating a law of some sort.
Yeah, you're always in a perpetual state of breaking the law without even realizing it, because there's that many laws. And they're not cut and dry, clear. They're not principled laws. They're so specific that it covers everything on a large detail when it really doesn't need to. Like a broad scale principled law would do better, because then you can't find loopholes through it. There are no loopholes.
No. Well, we're not going to get outside this question. Like, you don't want broad laws. You want very specific laws that exclude certain things.
I'm not just talking just laws. I'm talking principled laws.
But
specifically,
for example, obstruction of justice, right? Police will constantly charge people, and it gets thrown out or not by a DA or not, because it wasn't actually obstruction. It was just the police decided you complaining too much was an obstruction. Because
that's how obstruction works.
Yeah. So what they now pass in some states where they specifically say obstruction must be a physical act, right? Because they don't want to. Because if you arrest someone for verbally obstructing you, the judge will throw out, or the prosecutor, and then that means they're going to sue you for a civil rights violation, your freedom of speech, right?
Yeah.
So you want laws that specify what it does and doesn't cover.
Well, sure, but that what I'm saying is that could be one law that has a definition behind it that can be very specific, rather than having a law for every potential incident that could have, because you could have 10,000 different people with 10,000 different incidents.
You'll never have a law that covers everything, because we're constantly inventing new things.
Well, I know, but I'm saying that you'd have the principal umbrella coverage of something. But let's not get too far into that, because we're going to fall way off the topic. I mean, we already are, but it's
of the Second World War, and they lived it.
It's a classic question of topic discussion.
I know, we started out being like, this is really cool about like how their emotional stuff, blah blah blah, and now we're talking about nothing related
by our
to
not sponsor, Elon Musk. Or not sponsor,
definitely not sponsored.
And Lewis is saying explicitly that work reflects our shared toil, our shared loves, our shared sacrifice, our friendship. It's hidden in the pages of Lord of the Rings. Wow.
That's a big deal. That's a big deal. Okay, so the title of the book is The War for Middle Earth.
Yes.
Remind us again of the subtitle. You say a lot in the subtitle.
Yes, J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis confront the gathering storm, 1933 to 1945.
Okay.
I remember when you...
So I'm going to wonder if Laconia here, to explain to this other guy that, like, we're standing on Middle Earth.
Yeah. I don't know if he will or not, but he might.
I don't think the guy doing the interview realizes what the title means.
Probably not. Most people probably wouldn't either, to be fair.
Were announcing me in the first book, I did a talk in the first book. The subtitle was so long, I think you used the phrase interminably long. But I'm not bitter about it. I really have gotten over it. I just want you to know.
Totally not bitter about that.
That's the funny thing about subtitles, right?
Come on, you can do it. Come on.
I mean, that just reminds me of anime titles. It's like that one time I died and was reincarnated in another world to sponsor a horse derby race that led me on to adopting an entire orphanage of children before I raised them all to be dragon fighters and go off into the underworld dungeons that led us to another planetary existence to fight off an evil demon lord. That's the title of the anime. It's like, okay. Why?
I brought up Naruto before. Minato Namikaze, Naruto's father, spoilers, invented a jutsu that everyone else called the Rasengan. His actual name for it, and like all the jutsu, was the super spiraling, inverting, blah blah, like 7 letters. Like his Shinobi Cork was naming all the jutsus these ridiculously complex names.
Yeah.
Like a subtitle. It's like
it's more annoying when they sit there and they say like every time he does it, they're starting to spiraling as he's like winding it up. It's like, don't do that. Just hit them with it. Just
yeah.
it drives me nuts.
Someone did a fan fiction once. This will be a short reference.
Only once.
Where Naruto was developing his own jutsu, so he'd run into the third Hokage when he was a little kid and saying, "Look, Grandpa Hokage, I made a new jutsu." Had a 17-letter name, and the Hokage would just hang his head and go, "Oh my God, he's too much influence with his father. It's genetic. It's genetic."
It's a genetic problem.
Yeah.
That colon
on the page. Come on.
You got the colon, and you can just go and nobody's going to stop you.
Yeah.
Where do you go with this in the book? I haven't read the book yet. It's not out as we're having this conversation. Where do you take this?
I'm starting pre-1933. I want to give a little kind of recap of the post-World War I trauma, disillusionment. The shell-shocked veteran is really a walking metaphor for the European mind in the 1920s, right? The anti-heroism, which is almost pathological. So I want to give some of that cultural background, but also political background.
Yeah.
Hitler in 1925, the first installment of Mein Kampf is published in 1925. This is the year that Tolkien and Lewis are actually back at Oxford for the first time, in that first year. They're coming back as instructors. It's that year that Mein Kampf appears. So there's things are beginning to happen in the 20s. I want to give some of that background, some of their friendship. But then 1933 on is where I spend the bulk of the book. And I'm almost taking it month to month at some points. I'll give you an example, if I could. 1942, for example, in the spring. Yes, America is in the war, Pearl Harbor, but Eric, we're not prepared for the Second World War, and we're getting our butts kicked by the Japanese in the Pacific, as the Brits are as well. And it's one failure, one surrender, one disaster after another. All of Europe is in Nazi hands, the Soviets are doing their thing, and now the Japanese are running amok in the Pacific. And it looks like, in the first part of 1942, like civilization is on the edge of a knife. If we could quote from Lady Galadriel, your quest stands upon the edge of a knife. Stray but a little and it will fail to the ruin of all. That's 1942, the spring. And in that moment, and this is what I try to do in the book, is contextualize. In that moment, Tolkien is stuck with he can't write anymore in The Lord of the Rings. And he's fallen into kind of a gloom. And he wakes up one morning, he says, and out comes a short story called Leaf by Niggle. It's considered the most autobiographical. It's about a painter named Niggle who was painting this great canvas, this great tree, and he can't finish it. And it came out fully formed. And biographers would say, this really looks like a kind of a self-medication. He's treating himself emotionally by writing this story. He's feeling mortality. He's feeling the shortness of the tether, if I could borrow from C.S. Lewis. The curtain's coming down. I think he's just turned 50. He's turned 50 in 1942. So he's feeling mortality. He doesn't think he's going to finish The Lord of the Rings. And he writes Leaf by Niggle, and it's an incredibly beautiful story
Leaf
of
by
friendship.
Niggle, I don't remember too much about it, but I remember loving it. It's one of those great stories that I think, man, this
profoundly
is...
redemptive.
Bet your bottom dollar that guy never read Leaf by Niggle.
I mean, maybe he did. Maybe he just doesn't remember it, but I'm not going to call him a liar because I don't know what he did or didn't do. So...
message, and it helps to bring him out of the gloom.
Yeah.
And with Lewis's encouragement as well, he gets on with his story.
Yeah.
So I'm taking it through at certain points, almost month by month, what is going on as they're saying various things, as they're meeting, a journal entry here, a journal entry there. I'll give you another example, if you don't mind. 1941, December. J.R.R. Tolkien would write these Christmas letters, Father Christmas letters. You've probably seen the collection, perhaps, of the book of them, when his kids were really small, but he kept doing them. Father Christmas. These letters would arrive in the mail, illustrated by Tolkien. Whimsical, fun, funny. The polar bear adventures with Father Christmas. Well, you know what he's writing in 1941? Can I read you a few lines?
Please.
From December. Could I just do that?
Yeah.
I think I'll find it pretty quickly here. Here it is. To his daughter Priscilla, December of 1941. We've just entered the war, but we're not ready, the Americans. And all of Europe is in Nazi hands, and Britain's hanging by a thread. This is what Father Christmas writes to Priscilla. I expect you remember that some years ago we had trouble with the goblins, and we thought we had settled it. Well, it broke out again this autumn, worse than it's been for centuries. So terribly many people have lost their homes or have left them. Half the world seems in the wrong place. This is Father Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Merry Christmas,
Christmas,
kids.
Priscilla. Merry Christmas, kids. Half the world's in the wrong place. He's talking about life as it is. Father Christmas cannot avoid the reality of the horror of what's going on. And I think somebody needed to kind of write a book that helped us to understand what these men are enduring, what they're going through as they're carrying on with their great vocations as Christian authors and scholars. So I took a stab at it.
Part of what's interesting, when you mention Hitler writing the first part of Mein Kampf in 1925,
yes.
What's interesting is that all of Europe, the United States not quite so much, but Europe, Western Europe is in despair. There's cynicism, economic agony. And it's interesting how Hitler provides huge hope for millions, which we just happen to know ends up not working out so well. But it's so interesting how people are looking for something. And then that's, of course, the question. Is what you take as the answer good or evil? Is it in New York right now, you know, a lot of people are struggling, and essentially a communist with a big smile may win the mayoralty of this. And it's a very similar thing. You know, you promise hope and change, and you smile, and people say, well, hey, well, you know, where does it go? And of course, we know that there's nothing new here, that there were charismatic figures in the past. And the question is, you know, we don't want to condemn being charismatic. We don't want to condemn populism. We don't want to. What we want is to know, is it the good kind or the other kind?
That's right. That's right. And what centers us? What is our moral center is part of the question. I mean, it was Mussolini, as you well know, who first introduced fascism into the European bloodstream.
I don't know if that's necessarily true. It was just he popularized it in the modern sense, because I believe
that's true.
The Romans were pretty fascistic under the old definition, kind of like how they were tyrannical dictators, but dictator didn't mean what it means now.
Well, no, I mean, I guess you're talking about the Republic period, not the Empire period, right? Because technically an emperor can't be fascistic because he's the emperor, you know. He's the absolute ruler. So obviously when they elect remember the two dictators they could elect during time of war in Roman Republic, the special provision, where they can choose a guy and make him the dictator in time of crisis under the Roman Constitution, which, by the way, was the basis for the election of Palpatine as chancellor with special powers. That's a whole separate issue. That guy can be qualified as a fascist, that dictator, if he rules. But
that's what I'm saying. It's not, he didn't invent the concept. He just brought it to the modern spoke.
22. My grandfather got out of Italy in 1921. He was 17 years old. Nice timing, Grandpa Aiello. That's the Aiello side of the family. Great timing. Left Italy and never really looked back. So what was Mussolini promising to the Italian people, who were on the winning side of the war, but still devastated? Italians lost 500,000 people. 500,000 people they lost in the First World War, but not much to show for it. So there's a sense of also gloom, disillusionment with the Italians. Here comes Mussolini, right? Regained Italian glory and honor and all the rest of it. So what's the moral grounding of the charismatic leader in the case of a Hitler, of a Mussolini, of a Stalin? And this is totalitarianism. And what are they all promising, Eric? They're promising a kind of utopian society. Every aspiration will be met in us, in the state. In the state. We will be the fulfillment of your deepest longings and aspirations. You will be absorbed, you will serve the state, but you will also find your own even spiritual fulfillment in the state. Incredible.
Now, what's interesting, of course, to us as Americans is that Americans ought to be inoculated against that.
Yes.
Because we have a history where we know that fulfillment in the state not going to work. We know. I mean, it's an amazing thing that 250 years ago we understood this and we formulated this, and it does come out of the Christian tradition. That's not debatable. It's fascinating to me that. So we in America, that the siren song that many in Europe, because Europe was already post-Christian enough, not maybe to see where this could go.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there was the forces of secularization had worked pretty deeply into many, many layers of European society, and the Christian churches, you could argue.
So it is not well known, but because the modern left tries to obfuscate this, the Nazis were socialists, the communists obviously. They were all based on secularism and atheism, even though they gave lip service to Christianity at various points, in certain socialist groups. They're all based on the idea that the state is the source of moral authority, the state is your source of rights, the state is your source of power, right? Not that there's an external thing that we have to answer to. Of God, So
it's the funny thing is like the nationalistic socialistic party of Germany and everything. They're like the staple for modern history of a wolf in sheep's clothing. They're trying to say, oh, we're Christians, we believe in God, blah blah blah, and then while doing absolutely nothing that God or Christianity would even lean in any shape or form in the direction of. So it's people still think, oh well, they're this because X, Y, and Z, but their policies say otherwise. They're this, but their actions say otherwise. They're this, but they're actually that, and that. And it's just like they're the poster child of someone claiming a religion or a stance, a principle or something, while completely doing the opposite of that stance, principle, or religion. Like, you cannot tell me that what the Nazis did was anywhere remotely close to, say, what Christianity would promote or teach. And thus you cannot say it's a Christian group. It's not a Christian nation. It's not Christian stuff because they're not doing Christian things. They're doing everything
if you
but
look at
Christian stuff.
Let's leave other religions out of this. Just say talk about Christianity. What doesn't mean I am Christian, but it doesn't mean I'm discounting Islam or Judaism or Hinduism or whatever. I'm just talking about Christianity right now. Okay. So if you look at what the historical revisionists of the left do when there's war that involves Christianity, are they try to say that Christianity is evil, right? Or they try to say that they changed the nature of what the war was about to try to not have the war make it seem like the war was fought for immoral reasons, like the Crusades, especially the first 2 or 3 of them. They were sent out there because Christians were being killed by Muslims and conquerors were being conquered in the Middle East.
Well, it was 800 years of Islamic aggression prompted the Crusades. It wasn't the Crusades one day they just woke up and said, let's go fight these people because of reasons.
Well, the point I'm getting at is, so when they get to those wars, which were defensive wars, right? They get mischaracterized to make the war evil, so it makes Christianity look bad.
Yeah.
In other cases, when a war happens that is bad, they say, well, the leader claimed to be Christian, so Christianity is bad. They go at it from both angles.
And even the aspects of the Crusades that were actually, in fact, evil, like the Crusade was called for a righteous reason, allegedly, right? Like that's the idea is that they're like, we need to stop these aggressors and whatnot. And so they call the rulers and noblemen and everything, say, bring your troops, and then, whatever. And then they go on the Crusades. But what the nobles do after they either are on their way or get to their destination isn't what the Crusade was initially started for.
Well, that was the later Crusades.
Well, sure. But I'm saying like the Crusades as a multiplicity rather than just a singular. It's not just the first Crusade. But like when, I think it was the second or third when they attacked Byzantium, and sack it because they were the easy ones sitting there and they could do it. So it's just like what they went for was the wealth, not for the cause of Christ. And that means that they were not following the Christian call that the Pope did, rather than...
Well, we could go round and round.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying, like, it's that mentality where, like, the people in the crusade didn't all follow the original intent of those instances. And though through that we see it and say, oh, look, the Christians are behaving horrible. I'm like, but they weren't acting like a Christian in any shape or form, so I don't know how you could call them Christian. But because the Crusades were Christian, allegedly, then everything that is done by that side has to be sanctified as Christian, right? Like, oh, it has to be. It's like, well, no, it doesn't. Actions are individually attributed, and the causes are based upon those actions. So if your cause is acting and behaving Christ-like, then you will be attributed to being a Christian. If your actions are not those things, it's the absence of that attribution. So you can't. It's the stupidity of just saying, well, they say this thing, therefore they are this thing. It's like, no, that's not how that works.
Had become not inoculated. They'd become ineffective, anemic. They couldn't stand up against the world. They just didn't have the wherewithal, the moral, spiritual wherewithal to stand up against the world. They were accommodating. And of course, they also had a relationship with their own state governments, unlike the United States, right?
Well,
state religions.
You wrote a book about Churchill and the, I don't remember the title of that book that you wrote, about the theologically liberal pastors in Europe, their inability to stand.
The End of Illusions,
Yep.
The Illusions book, that's right. That's right. The liberal theologians who just couldn't see what was happening, wouldn't see what was happening.
Well, say a little bit about that, because it's fascinating to me. Yes. You know, when people say something is Christian, you know, you want to know, at least I do, is it really, or does it just claim to be?
It's kind of what we were just talking about.
Yes. The liberal theologians that you write about in The End of Illusions, they failed in the way that Tolkien and Lewis succeeded.
Yes.
They didn't take their faith to the bottom. It was a kind of a, they hadn't, it seems to me, worked out their faith in the way that it needs to be worked out to confront evil.
Yes. And they had a biblical anthropology, if we could use a $25 word. They had a view of the human person that was rooted in Genesis. Man made in the image of God, bearing incredible dignity, but deeply fallen. And yes, there's the memory of Eden, but it's a memory. So we have the aspirations for Eden, aspirations for heaven, but we're cut off from the source of life. And both men believe that deeply. I mean, Tolkien says explicitly in some of his letters, my story is about the fall. All good, great stories are about the fall. He just says it. The Lord of the Rings, right? Lewis says it throughout his works. In the Screwtape Letters, there's a place where he says one of his installments in Mere Christianity, in the broadcasts, one of the installments is called The Invasion. The Invasion. And then he takes the example of the Second World War and he uses it as a metaphor for the spiritual invasion. And he says, we live in rebel-occupied territory. Rebel meaning the devil. We are occupied by the dark forces. We need to be part of the resistance, he says. This is a broadcast over the BBC in 1941-42, right? We're living in occupied territory. We need to be part of the resistance. So they were acutely aware of the spiritual dimension to life.
You can really tell he's Italian because he's talking with his hands.
Yeah.
which I think the liberal theologians, not so much. Not so much, right.
Not so
well,
much.
It's interesting because this is something that's come to interest me particularly in recent years. You know, when someone says, I'm a Christian, at this point,
yes.
I've come to the conclusion that
I love it says I'm a Christian, and then I go back to the movie Civil War. What kind of Christian are you? It just pops in my head. I don't know why. It makes me laugh.
I know that means Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because these are just words, you know.
Yeah. I love the classic, if you remember playing Total War Medieval 2.
Mm-hmm.
And you go talk to an enemy general, and he goes, "Talk is cheap. Come fight me." It's like, that's the thing that always plays in my head. I got it stuck in my head. So anytime somebody says words like, "Oh, I believe X," but then you never see that through the actions they take or through their life or anything, the first thing that popped in my head is, "Talk is cheap. Come fight me." Because it's the same thing as like when you meet those people who are really like belligerent and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna mess you up if I ever meet you in life," and it's like they're barking an awful lot. But what about their bite? And then you're like, "Talk is cheap. Come fight me." Like, just come here, show me you have the passion or the courage or bravery behind what you said. Show me that what you said has weight. And so often we get people who don't do that. They don't understand. They can't comprehend. They just bark, expecting you to just take the manipulation tactic and just keel over and say, "Okay, don't hurt me." It's like, no. Talk is cheap. Come fight me. Like, show me that your words are more than just words. Show me that your actions speak louder than words, which is a very common idiom that people like to use because it's very well placed in terms of how we need to, when we say something, we say, "I'm a Christian." You need to be saying, "I'm a Christian," not because I just said the words, but because I'm actually a Christian, because I do the part.
Yeah.
So,
and Lewis,
like if you're a sports ball fan, right? You have your favorite team. You don't just say, "I like this team." No. You put the jersey on. You're getting you're like, when you're making the food like a freaking football or a soccer field or a baseball field. Like, you're going the 10 yards. People will look at your food and nothing else, and they'll say, "You're a sports ball fan." Like, that's when you know somebody is.
That's how I find the Mets fans, so we can send them to the camps.
But yeah, it's like, talk is cheap. So when somebody says, "I am X," never take them at their word. Take them at their word after you see their actions. When somebody says, "I care about you," but all they do is not care about you, they don't care about you. It doesn't matter how many times they say, "I care about you."
Yeah.
They don't care about you. And therefore, you can ignore the fact that they said they care about you, because you shouldn't be trusting what they say, because they have shown themselves to be untrustworthy. And so you say, well, if you say you care about me, why does all of your actions say the contrary? Your actions are louder than what you told me, and thus you can stop this whole nonsense that you're trying to perform.
And Tolkien, they were the real thing.
Yes.
And I think that their ability to produce these epic works, these great works, that have lasted as though they have, it really proves it in a way.
Yes. Yes, I think their works will last as long as the English language lasts. They're so beautifully written. They're so powerful. They're so imbued with moral purpose.
I mean, they might even
I
translate.
think he's wrong. I think they'll surpass the English language.
Yeah, I mean, they've been translated in so many freaking languages. Unless language completely just ups on its head, they'll be around
like
for a long time.
10,000 years when we're speaking Chai-Ing Spanish or whatever they're going to call it by then.
It'll be Gorp, Gorp language.
Yeah. So the Lord of the Rings will be in that language. When aliens show up, they'll be like, "Can we get English copies of the Lord of the Rings?"
Yeah, the conservators, alien species. That'd be funny.
And dignity.
It'd be funny if, like, the first aliens were giant spiders. I didn't want the Lord of the Rings because they read there were giant spiders in it.
Ungoliant and Shelob. That's their point of reference. And the spiders in Mirkwood.
Yeah.
There's nothing like them, I think. There's nothing like them in modern literature.
I think of, whenever I think of Perelandra, I think that it ought to be taught as a sequel to Paradise Lost. It seems to me to be so much written like a sequel to Paradise Lost, and it's great. And you can't...
Wait a minute.
What?
Didn't Dante write a sequel to Paradise Lost? Not Dante, Milton. Didn't Milton write a sequel?
I don't know.
He could be right about that.
Give him the benefit of the doubt. If not,
No.
not.
I'm not saying he's stupid or anything, but my brain is saying Milton wrote a
Well,
follow-up.
it's also an hour-long dialogue and
Yeah.
interview, and that if you're going for any length of period of time, it's very easy for someone to make a simple Freudian slip and just say something that they didn't mean. So I'm not going to hold it against him.
No, I'm not saying anything against him. I'm just bringing up the fact that here's why I wish I had Otis here would know this. He would know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Unfortunately, he's never available.
Otis, if you're listening, text us the answer.
Please do.
If you understand the world,
write a sequel to Paradise Lost. It's your Otis. We're sending psychic vibes to you right now.
Well, if you get a text from him in the next 5 minutes, let me know.
I know. It'll just pop up,
You understand the fall and the redemption.
Yes.
If you understand all that, you realize everything's about that because reality is about that because it is not escapable.
Yes.
There's no other reality where you can effectively write and not deal with that.
Yes, and it seems to me to live through the war years, 1939, 1945, and not come to the conclusion.
He seems more like a more sane version of Bernie Sanders with his mannerisms. This guy.
Oh. Locante?
Yeah.
He's clearly a conservative of some sort.
No, I'm not talking about his political persuasion. I'm talking his mannerisms.
Oh.
Like how he does the hands and the millionaires and the billionaires and all that stuff. Like just their mannerisms seem to remind me of them, and I'm like, it's kind of funny.
Okay.
That there's something deeply wrong in human nature. You have your head in the sand. And these men did not have their heads in the sand. They are realists. They're often accused, at least then during the day, and even now, you'll have some modern critics accuse them of escapism. Escapism.
Yeah.
I mean, think about Plato's cave, the analogy of the cave. What is Plato trying to do? He's trying to awaken the moral imagination, isn't he? Just to help people see. You think these shadows are reality. They're not reality. Come out into the sunlight. That's what they're trying to do with their incredible epic works. Pierce through the darkness. Get out of the cave and see reality, the human condition in all of its frailty, right? And all of its tragedy.
And the classic example of that from Lewis is in The Silver Chair, when Prince Caspian, isn't he down in a cave someplace, and they're trying to convince him that there is no such thing as the sun and the moon and the stars.
That's right.
And
it's right out of Plato.
And it is, and of course it's powerful, and anybody reading it, you're rooting for him to wake up.
Yes.
You're rooting for him to wake up to the reality so he can fight.
So for reference purpose, people will get that. The Chronicles of Narnia were published in a certain order, but they don't occur in that chronological order with their internal.
Yeah, Magician's Nephew is the first, if I recall correctly.
Well, I mean, the first written is The Lion, Rich, and the Wardrobe. But
no, I meant the Magician's Nephew. I thought was the first one in the actual order.
Yeah, actual order I think is Magician's Nephew.
Yeah.
But so you have, before you choose to read that series, you probably should.
It would probably help to read them in the actual order they're supposed to be told, not in their release date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you should go online and read the fan debate and see and kind of make your choice with a little bit of,
I mean, the stories are worth reading anyway. It's just it'll help you on a time scale to know where they actually take place, or in what time order. Obviously, the last battle is the last book, so that's a pretty easy one to place. But
and that The Silver Chair is such a great book. Sometimes I would say that has to be my favorite of the Narnia Chronicles.
Really.
But it's I didn't. You mentioned not having read Lord of the Rings until later in life. I never read the Narnia Chronicles until I was in my early 30s, I think.
Yeah.
And they're clearly, as far as I'm concerned, clearly meant for adults.
Absolutely.
Even though kids can read them. But wow.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I would say that the content of the Chronicles of Narnia is written for adults, but in a way that kids can also participate. But the actual principles and learning messages and stuff are there for the adults. And for the kids who read them, they grow up and they may or may not remember / catch on to them. So I think it's a good thing for people to just to read them in general.
Yeah.
Right.
What? I really, I can't think of anything as great as the Narnia Chronicles.
I mean, can you think of any other authors who can communicate such profound truths about the human condition through literature in ways that are so compelling and speak across generations, right, across cultures? They have this universal appeal. I interviewed Neil Ferguson, the great British historian, a couple of years back about this whole project. And Neil Ferguson is a fascinating guy, brilliant historian. And he said that he feared for our civilization if these books could not be read and embraced by the next generation of children. That's how important they were in identifying these basic truths and holding up these high ideals. He feared for our civilization if they couldn't be passed on, the Chronicles of Narnia, right?
Well, the thing is, we have to acknowledge how rare they are. It's kind of like saying, okay, forget about Shakespeare. Who else we got? There's nothing to compare. There's nobody writing when Shakespeare is writing to compare to Shakespeare. There's Shakespeare, and then there's not much. Yeah. When I think of Lewis or Tolkien, who else you got? It's
a small list. It's a short list.
It's a gift. I mean, that's what I'm saying. These figures are such a gift. I mean, you think, what if George Washington hadn't been born? Who you got? Would we have prevailed in the Revolution?
That's an excellent question. Yes.
Almost certainly not.
Yes.
So that's really the.
Yes, it's if Washington was the indispensable man, as you know from our time, our struggle, it seemed like these two men were the indispensable men for Oxford in the 1930s and 40s to help make Oxford and beyond a beachhead of resistance against the forces of darkness. It's hard to imagine.
I don't know if it's going so hot for them right now,
the
though.
literary world, and maybe our own world, without them, without their contribution.
Oh, our own world.
Right?
No, our own world for sure. What is the phrase that you mentioned when you talked about Gollum's biting off the finger of the ring and the
ring is
the
mine.
Grace, but the grace.
Oh, a sudden miraculous grace.
Right.
That's Tolkien's phrase. Yeah. Eucatastrophe was the expression he created.
Yeah.
Victory!
The sudden
Miraculous grace.
Miraculous grace. I would say, talking to you.
Praise,
should we call it?
Praise heaven, Rond.
Lord Elrond is here. Should we call it a? She said, "You victory." Should be the. What the heck is that? That me?
That's you. That's a phone.
Oh. I don't even know what that is.
It's your room phone, probably.
I am. Well, better stop. I'll mute myself.
Okay.
That the advent of Lewis and Tolkien and their friendship and the production of these works is God's miraculous grace to save us from what we might have fallen into. That they are, in the real world, an analog of that moment in Tolkien's epic.
Wow, that may well be right. And what it brings to mind is a line from Lewis to Tolkien, describing the impact of The Lord of the Rings on his life. He says, I think I got this quote exactly right. He says, "My entire philosophy of history is summed up in a single sentence of your own." Do you want to know the sentence? I'm not going to tell your audience, I'm sorry. I have to go now. It's summed up in a single sentence. My entire philosophy of history is summed up in a single sentence. It's a line from Lord of the Rings. "There was sorrow then too, and gathering dark, but great valor and great deeds that were not wholly vain." And what is he saying? There's a moral realism. He's navigating between cynicism and utopianism. The tragedy of the human condition, but there are things worth doing in this world, Frodo. Right? We got to get into the fight. And the little hobbit, the little hands of the little hobbit, these are the wheels that turn the world. Right? Right.
Well, I guess it sort of reminds me of the last line of Middlemarch about the people who lie in unmarked graves who've done great things.
Yes, yes.
It's at the heart of everything.
Yes.
Well, you are, I should say to the audience, in case they're wondering, because there's a lot of people who write about a lot of stuff, and the ideas are great, but the writing is not necessarily great. You write in such a way that is really compelling. Anybody listening to talk or any student you've had in your classes would know this, but that's very important. And so I want my audience to know that these books are actually fun to read and wonderful. And so I will simply say congratulations on the new book, The War for Middle Earth. And thank you, Joe, so much for this time. It's been a delight.
Thank you, Eric. What a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
If you think these conversations...
That's just a general shilling of his own stuff, so I'm going to call that good on that.
That was pretty good.
I was actually happy with that because I was like, I don't think it's going to be a dialogue where it's, we need to make Gondor trans or something like that, but
yeah, we had some disagreements with the guy, but that's intellectual stuff,
Yeah.
Like, I enjoed that. I enjoyed that video. I wish we could do more content like that where it's...
I wish there was more content of that to do.
I think we had 2 videos like that. The one we were surprised by with that presentation that woman did, where she was comparing Lord of the Rings to some sort of Indian thing. You remember? I remember the.
I don't remember enjoying that one. That was one of the weird ones.
No, but I enjoyed it because she wasn't saying the Lord of the Rings was written in India 18 million years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
She was comparing it to something in Indian culture, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Now the presentation could have been a little better. You said that at the time.
The one I really liked was the Russian art one during the.
That was really good too.
That one was my favorite by far.
Yeah.
I wish there were more of these types of talks and conversations and stuff, but unfortunately, there's apparently, as far as I can find, there's not a whole lot on the topic. It's more pop culture, pop level stuff, for the most part, and most of it's not like academic. Outside of like what the Tolkien Society claims is academic, but I have a hard time putting the Tolkien Society into the academic sphere because it's kind of like I'm an academic, therefore anything I write is legitimate, and I wrote this, and it's an absolute piece of garbage. And it's like, well, no, that's not how that works. You don't have to be an academic to understand that this is bad, and you should feel bad.
Yeah, my only like complaint, I don't mean in a bad way, my criticism of this video, I just wish the interviewer knew more about Tolkien and his work.
Yeah, so. The problem is, and I'll grant this to interviewers, because interviewers as a whole don't often know everything there is to know. They're bringing on a special guest who knows everything, so they don't have to. Because, like, I would say I'm more of an interviewer, and I would like to do something like this, but I don't really know how to implement it on a YouTube level. But having somebody on, and I myself don't have to be knowledgeable about everything in the topic, but I have to be aware of the person I'm dealing with and what their achievements and stuff are. And if you're aware of those things, when it comes down to the wire and you're just like asking questions, you're using what we would call like a reactionary. Like, for example, when we watch this video, when somebody says something, we pause it and we talk about it right then and there. That's a reactionary system. But it's not just a reactionary like Twitch or something where you got Asmongold reacting to this, or Hassan Piker reacting to this, or Dr. Disrespect and his reacting to his gameplays and stuff. It's not that kind of reaction. It's the kind of reaction where if I was to sit down and have a conversation with this person, I would ask them questions in the moment, and I'd have the knowledge of something in the moment that if you were to ask me like 3 days later, I'd probably like, I don't remember. I don't know. Yeah. It's a reactionary mindset, and it's usually for those of us who have a hard time remembering all the massive amount of details that you would have to remember in order to have that good of a thing. And I just don't have that good of a memory. So being a reactionary interviewer is, in my position, the better choice. It's just I have to have the topics of the people available to be able to do something like that, and it'd be very, very difficult to do without being full time. So. But
I was watching an interview today. Do you know who Linus Torvald is?
Can't say I do.
He invented Linux. He invented Linux.
Okay.
And he was on. Do you know who Linus Tech Tips is? Do you know what that is?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yes. So, out of the blue, Linus from Linus Tech Tips sent an email to Linus Torvalds. Could you want to come on the show? I'll build you a computer, and we could interview you during that. So he basically interviewed him while building Linus Torvalds a new computer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a freaking supercomputer, basically. And in the middle of it, they're talking about Linus Torvalds' book that he wrote a few years ago. And Linus Torvalds goes to Linus from Linus Tech Tips and goes, "Wait, you actually read the book?" And Linus goes, "Yeah, I interviewed. So of course I want to read the book." You know, it's like,
well, yeah, but even if you read, like, okay, for example, in this particular interview that we just watched, he's friends with the guy, and the book's not out,
all
so
I'm
he can't.
saying is it was a funny thing. Like,
Oh, sure.
okay,
Yeah.
Linus Torvalds shows, wow, you read the book? Like, wow.
Well, that's because a lot of interviewers, they don't read the book per se. They'll get like the footnotes or whatever of it, and then they'll run with that. And I get that.
Cliff notes, you know.
Yeah, that's the footnotes basically. Yeah, but if you have somebody who has work and you want to interview them about said work, usually the reason you want to interview them about that work is because you've read that work. Is the typical scenario.
Yeah.
However, when somebody says something that's not related to their work, as an interviewer, you still react to what they're saying in that moment in time. So, I think that's a funny like reaction. He's like, "Of course I read it," and it's like, "Well, that's why. Why did he reach out to you? Did he just like, well, this guy's the guy who invented Linux, therefore I'll get a lot of popularity on a video if I do this."
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's a thing, but I mean, as much as
that video will do millions and millions of views.
Yeah, well, it'll probably make up for the computer he's building for him. But in terms of like, is it really going to be beneficial to him? Sure, but at the same time, if he actually read the book and is asking questions about the book, that's where you're going to get a lot more of, well, yeah, you should probably do that because you're asking somebody to show up and you want to talk about a topic. To have the topic, you need to be somewhat knowledgeable on the topic. And if the topic is the guy's book, you need to read the book to know that you have the knowledge for that topic. So, but yeah, I can see that.
Well, no, the computer, I can guarantee you the computer is paid for by the sponsors. I get 100% guarantee.
Oh, yeah, I fully believe
like, wait
it.
a minute. You're building a computer for Linus Torvalds? Take this $8,000 graphics card. Take this $2,000. Just take them,
Well, yeah.
But then they can say to people, Linus Torvalds used a $2,000 CPU in his computer.
Yeah. I mean, I want somebody to make me one of those computers. Not that that's gonna happen, but we can dream. But yeah, I really enjoyed this video. I enjoyed the conversations and stuff that they had amongst each other. I'm glad we actually got to add commentary. We had an 1.5-hour commentary to an hour-long video, so
yeah,
I think we're doing pretty good.
Productive,
Yeah, and it was
good discussions. We reined ourselves in.
We tried, yes.
Well, we did. We didn't have, because we've had, for the audience who hasn't watched our 7-hour-long videos, although granted that requires at least 3 of us to hit 7 hours. But
I mean, I could do it myself. I just have to have a topic that's long enough for me to do that.
We have followed the road of side topics down deep holes before, and like we were talking about some, I don't know, Lord of the Rings thing, and in the middle of that video, we wound up talking about like, cosmology.
Yeah. We'll think of something in the back of our mind and say, no, this is relevant to the conversation, and then we can start talking about it.
I think Sage and I were trying to educate you on how gravity works, talking about force planes and 3-dimensional curvation, and it was. But anyway, the point.
It was the dark side of the force planes for those of you who are not aware.
Yeah, we were trying to learn and rein ourselves in.
We're trying. It's difficult, but sometimes our side conversations are more interesting than the topic we're talking about.
That is very true.
It's kind of sad, not gonna lie.
Quote to Kurt Angle. It's true. It's true.
Absolutely true. But yeah,
no, that was his thing. He goes, "It's true. It's true."
All right, I'll take your word for it.
Well, that was funny. That was his early thing. It was a wrestling thing, people in reference.
Yeah, I know
his
who he
is. Was saying it's true. It's true. Then when he did a major heel turn, audience to his music started, because it was worked out, started chanting, "You suck," right? So, and then it became a term of endearment when he became a good guy. They'd go, "You suck, go Kurt, go." It's like, And in retirement, they come out. Now he's retired, so they'll chant "You suck" for like 5 minutes. When he comes out as a retired wrestler, it's like, yeah.
But yeah, that's probably going to be it for this video, guys. Thanks for sticking around with us as long as you did. And hopefully you enjoyed this as much as we did. I was kind of absorbed into listening to the point where I kind of forgot everything else was going on. But
It was a good topic.
It was a great topic. Wasn't where I thought it was going, but I'm kind of glad that it was the way it was. Yeah. You probably want to check out that book when it comes out. I don't know when that. Let me check to see when it actually was even out.
And for the audience who doesn't understand, we're living on Middle Earth. It's like Midgard. It's basically, that's the reference, basically. So Earth is Middle Earth is Midgard. Yeah.
So the this video was a month ago, so it should be coming out really soon. But I like this quote that's at the top.
The name of the book is what?
The War for Middle Earth.
So he did not write a book about the video game for anyone.
Yeah, it's not that one. But I like this quote they have at the very top of the description. Evil labors with vast power and perpetual success. In vain. Preparing always only the soil for unexpected good to sprout in, by J.R.R. Tolkien. I like that.
Yeah. It's a good quote.
But yeah, this is a branch of cornerstone.edu, I believe. So Socrates in the City is the name of the YouTube channel. So I'll have that and the author linked in the description if I can find his works. So, yeah. So, good match. Anything coming up, or are you just chilling for now?
Tomorrow, Wednesday night is overbooked. We'll just this video drops on Sunday, I think, right? So
it could be Friday, it could be Sunday. I haven't figured it out yet.
So if you're listening to this video on the Wednesday past it, our live stream of Wednesday's Overbooked about wrestling, we're talking about the WWE War Games Survivor Series event that just occurred the week before you are watching this. Then on that Thursday before, I'll be on the Empire channel for whatever we're talking about this week. I don't even know where it is. I have been doing little videos, like little live stream videos, giving health updates and talking about some stuff, general stuff. I'll probably do a little one maybe later tonight. I want to make a reference. I haven't seen the Stranger Things controversy yet, but probably drop a little.
I have never watched a single second of Stranger Things, and I'm completely okay with that.
It has its moments. I haven't been able to get past the first season yet because because there's a part of it I like a lot. I don't know. Do you like the movie The Goonies?
I watched that when I was a kid. I don't remember much of it.
Okay. If you like The Goonies, it's like The Goonies but a little darker. That part of the show is really good, right? Then there's a part of the show that is a lot darker. It's like Fringe, but it's not written as well as Fringe. And these two parts of the show blend together about dealing with the Lovecraftian horrors that are the villains in the show, right? So if they wrote the part that was like Fringe a little better, I think I'd really enjoy the show. You know what I mean?
I just want to see a show where it has Lovecraftian monsters and horrors and stuff, but they're like duking it out over territorial disputes. That'd be fun. Like Cthulhu versus Slender Man or something. I don't know, like something crazy.
Well, I mean, did you watch The Strain?
No.
Okay, that's based on some books by Guillermo del Toro about vampires. The vampires are a little bit Lovecraftian. We'll talk offline about it, so let's finish the video.
Sure. So there you have it.
That was one of the famous side discussions.
Infamous side discussions. But yes, you guys can always check out Matt's stuff on his channel. I was linked in the description as always. You guys know the drill.
Not sponsored by Elon Musk. What brought to you?
Yeah. I haven't added it yet, I don't think, but I mean to, and I always forget. But the socials, you have Twitter/X. You can follow me there. You can also join the Discord, which is preferred out of the two options if you only pick one. Jump in the Discord, hang out, enjoy the billions of memes that I post, because I post billions of them. And I wish I was exaggerating. And you can get basically the live stream schedule. You can also vote when I finish a live stream game. You can vote on what I play next. Currently, we're going through the Lord of the Rings games. And I've already done The Hobbit, and I'm trying to finish up on, by the time this comes out, maybe I have finished it, The Fellowship of the Ring, Game Boy Advance Edition for both of those. And then once we finish the Game Boy Advance editions of them, we'll move on to the full console editions, because the console editions are entirely different from the Game Boy Advance editions. They're not the same thing in any shape or form, besides being named the same thing. So we're going to play those, and then after that, who knows? The sky's the limit, and my bank account / my gaming library. I have a freaking huge game library, but you can check out some of the top things that I'm itching to play, and then if you guys have a recommendation you'd like to see me play something, there's a section where you can put that, and I can see if it's on sale or something, and I can do it that way. But we'll never know if you don't pop in. So also, you can have access to the Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle-earth all-in-one trilogy. That's a fan made of the Abandonware, the Battle for Middle-earth. I have an installation guide and links to everything as necessary, and point out the Discord group is in that all-in-one program, so you can access that, enjoy their tournaments, participate in their tournaments, as well as talk about any tech problems you might have. But it's a very, very simple game. It's just RTS Lord of the Rings that can be very complex if you make it so. And it's very fun, and I'll be playing with people as well once there's a particular bug they're working on. Once they figure that bug out, I will play the snot out of it with you guys if you guys want to play. It's up to 8 players, so we can have fun with all 8 people being people, or we can play 4v4, 2v2v, 2v2v2, all that kind of stuff. It's a grand old time. But aside from that, Criticalist, you can follow me on Criticalist. I am the Questioners. It's the same icon as the one in all my videos and the YouTube channel, so you can't really miss it. Also the one in the upper left corner of the video, or I guess maybe my left, your right, probably. Stage left. But yes. Or is it stage right? I don't even know. I'm not a theater kid.
Exit stage right.
Falls off the edge. Wrong direction. Pull the lever, Kronk. Wrong lever.
Snagglepuss?
What?
The Hanna-Barbera character. Exit stage right. It was Snagglepuss.
But you can also see I have a list of content creators I think you might enjoy, and you should support them if they're your cup of tea. Matt here is one of them, and so is Crimson and the White Cloaks.
You must enjoy my content. Enjoy it.
You will enjoy my content. Yeah. Anyway, you can see Prophet of the Dragon, White Cloaks, Pips, and those guys, as well as well, you'll see the list. The list is down there. Some of them are massively larger than the normal group of people I hang out with on the YouTubes, but they're still good content, so I think you would enjoy that. And then from there, below you have things of businesses that I think you should support if that's what you're in the market for or whatever. And if you can't afford those, then you can support them in other ways other than financial by letting people know about them. Several modding companies and a computer company like Meta PCs. So I'm not sponsored by anybody. I will probably never be sponsored by anybody, but I think that people should be aware that they exist and they can support them if they will. So thanks everybody for sticking around, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. So see you eventually. Walk in the light, my friends.